Although the dwarves from the third-tier civilization are seemingly grounded, they are evidently powerless in this matter, as they are not scientists. Even if they were scientists, it would not be of much help, because such a complex problem cannot be mastered by just one or even 10,000 scientists. They may only grasp one of the countless branches under this scientific problem, while being completely unaware of the others. One can only rely on oneself. Only by depending on oneself can one ultimately find a way to solve this equation. Chen sighed and made a decision. On this day, the top scientific journal published an article signed by Chen, announcing the technological breakthroughs achieved by human civilization during this period, as well as the upcoming goals. He particularly emphasized the equation that had troubled him for a long time, explaining how it was formulated, its significant importance, and the various attempts he made to solve it, ultimately detailing why he failed. Chen hoped to gather the strength of the entire civilization to find inspiration to unlock this equation. Every three-eyed being or dwarf knows that Chen is the name of the leader of human civilization. This article, personally written by Chen, immediately attracted the attention of almost every member of human civilization. However, over 99% of people lost interest after a quick scan of the article. It was too specialized, with a high reading threshold. The vast majority couldn't understand it at all and didn't even know what it was about. Yet, a small number of professionals developed a strong interest in it. They read the entire article carefully, which was not easy, as it contained over 100,000 words, with more than 80,000 words dedicated to the description of a particular equation. After striving to digest and understand it, they began to attempt to find ways to solve this equation in their own manner. At this moment, Zhao Wei, who worked at the Armored and Ballistics Research Center of the No. 7 Spaceship Research Base, also took note of Chen article. At first, Zhao Wei did not pay much attention to it, as he felt it was a physics problem, a field he was not proficient in. He was once a mathematician and was now a metallurgical engineer. However, as he read the article in detail and gained a deeper understanding of the series of complex equations referred to by Chen as the field equations, he suddenly realized that the essence of the problem was actually a mathematical one. This piqued his interest. It is worth noting that decades ago, he was recognized as a mathematical genius. Although it's better not to dwell on the past, he still maintained a strong passion for mathematics, despite his efforts to suppress it. Now, he decided to conduct some research and analysis on this problem. After all, it was too important. Once solved, it could directly elevate civilization from a secondary level to a tertiary level. Of course, he had no illusions about completely solving the problem. He merely hoped to contribute in some way. In this situation, on that night, he fully immersed himself in the analysis and contemplation of this series of equations. The more he analyzed and thought about it, the more interesting the problem became. Yes, it was interesting. That feeling was akin to a gamer searching for a way to defeat a boss or a flirtatious person pursuing a beautiful companion. He closed the door and dedicated himself entirely to this endeavor. For the first 6 months, Zhao Wei achieved nothing. However, one night, after staring blankly at a virtual sky, a spark of inspiration suddenly appeared in his mind. He had a hunch. He felt that perhaps, just perhaps, the discussions about the model transformations of Lie groups in infinite dimensional space from a paper he had submitted many years ago, which had received a score of 0 from the review committee, might be useful for solving this system of equations. At that time, to tackle this difficult problem, he had developed an entirely new set of mathematical tools. In that paper, he elaborated in detail on the usage of a mathematical tool he referred to as normative analysis, as well as the entire process of solving problems using this mathematical method. However, aside from addressing that issue related to group theory, normative analysis had no other practical applications, or, in other words, was utterly useless. Could the normative analysis method yield solutions to the field equations? A voice inside him kept urging him to give it a try, to just try it out. He felt a faint impulse stirring within him. Yet, normative analysis was truly a painful subject for him. He did not wish to revisit any memories associated with it. How could this possibly be useful? He chuckled bitterly. It was clearly just a flashy tool, a mathematical game. And what could normative analysis possibly contribute to the field equations? Sleep. He turned off the light, lay in bed, and covered his head, staying like that for over an hour. Afterward, he suddenly sat up, his eyes wide open, showing no signs of fatigue. It was just a trial after all. He was alone at home, and no one would know. Even if he failed, no one would mock him. Just try. He murmured, almost entranced, returning to his desk, turning on the computer, and taking out paper and pen to start sketching and calculating. He worked through the night, and by morning, he could no longer resist the overwhelming drowsiness and fell asleep. When he woke up at noon, he had a quick bite to eat before returning to his desk. A month passed in the blink of an eye. One late night, still hunched over his desk, struggling to sketch, Zhao Wei suddenly slammed his pen down on the table, stood up abruptly, breathing heavily, his body trembling with excitement. Had he really figured it out? Could it be? Zhao Wei murmured, his face even contorting with disbelief. The field equations had no analytical solutions, but numerical solutions could be calculated. Did he really manage to compute a numerical solution? It was just one numerical solution, and he was still far from solving the entire system of equations. However, this was undoubtedly a good start, a tangible achievement. It was important to note that, in the past, no one in human civilization had taken this first step. Moreover, since he had taken this first step, it meant that the path he chose was correct. Now that he had found the right direction, all he needed to do was move forward without worrying about losing his way. Zhao Wei suddenly let out a strange cry, nearly jumping out of his skin, bouncing around the room with excitement and making odd noises, as if he were possessed. Although it had not yet been verified or peer-reviewed, he was utterly convinced that his calculations were indeed correct. The mathematical tool he had created, initially dismissed by the review committee as having no practical applications, known as normative analysis, had proven to be crucial for this set of equations that represented a breakthrough for civilization. It turns out that the mathematical tool that human civilization eagerly longs for and urgently needs is the norm-based analysis that they have created themselves. At this moment, the excitement and grievances that had been suppressed for countless years erupted all at once. Within just a few minutes, there were loud banging sounds at the door. The voice of the local sheriff responsible for this area followed. "Mr. Zhao Wei, what's wrong? What happened? Do you need help?" After the earlier outburst, Zhao Wei's emotions finally stabilized a bit. He opened the door and casually dismissed the serious-looking sheriff, then immediately returned to his desk and clicked on the special icon on his computer. Within human civilization, every scientific worker can directly contact Qin Yu through this software. Of course, while Qin Yu doesn't mind this bit of computational load, researchers are usually very cautious and avoid disturbing him unless necessary. In the next moment, the virtual image of Qin Yu, who is online 24/7 all year round, appeared before Zhao Wei. "Hello, Zhao Wei, what's the matter?" "Leader, I just found a numerical solution to a field equation set." "What?" At that moment, even Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a jolt of excitement. "Send me your calculation process, immediately." Chapter 118. The capable go first. Zhao Wei quickly sent over the detailed process of his calculations using the norm-based analysis method, which filled over 100 pages of verification drafts, taking photos of each page and sending them to Qin Yu. Qin Yu mobilized his vast computational power and began to analyze the work with an incredibly serious attitude, trying to understand the logic Zhao Wei had employed. Could it be that today he had stumbled upon a treasure? At this moment, he felt a strong sense of excitement because this matter was of utmost importance. It could determine the future direction of the entire civilization and its fate. As Zhao Wei waited anxiously yet expectantly, Qin Yu remained silent for 5 long minutes. 5 minutes might be just a fleeting moment for an ordinary person, but for someone with such immense computational power, it was enough time to accomplish a great deal. At that moment, he devoted all his available computational resources to analyzing the hundreds of verification drafts. Then, Qin Yu awkwardly discovered that he couldn't understand it. Yes, although it was evident that Zhao Wei's calculation process was full of cleverness and brilliant ideas, and it seemed that there was over a 99% chance that his calculations were correct, Qin Yu still couldn't comprehend the specific process. Even though Qin Yu's knowledge surpassed Zhao Wei by hundreds of thousands or even millions of times, he still couldn't make sense of it. "Zhao Wei, start from the beginning and explain your thought process step by step. I'm having trouble understanding." Facing this somewhat awkward situation, Qin Yu had no psychological burden and openly admitted it, then humbly asked Zhao Wei for guidance. Instead, it was Zhao Wei who felt a bit flustered. Qin Yu smiled and said, "Zhao Wei, this inspiration belongs uniquely to you. You are a genius, without a doubt a genius. In this matter, I am not as good as you. There is an ancient saying in our human civilization, learning has no order. Those who achieve are teachers. Now, you are my teacher." Yes, Zhao Wei finally began to calm his mindset. At that moment, he felt a sense of sanctity enveloping his soul. It was as if he was not simply explaining some ideas, but was conducting a solemn and serious ceremony, one that could change the fate of an entire civilization. "First, leader, this is a mathematical tool I created called normative analysis. Initially, I attempted to extend Lie groups into infinite dimensional spaces, but found that there were insufficient practical mathematical tools available. Thus, I established this framework myself." Zhao Wei detailed the process of creating this mathematical tool, the underlying thoughts, and the specific process of using it to solve the initial problem. Once Qin Yu had enough understanding of the normative analysis tool, he began to explain the approach to using it for calculating the field equations. As Zhao Wei unfolded his ideas, even Qin Yu couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity of this mathematical tool. At that moment, Qin Yu even felt like he was back in his school on Earth, experiencing the same sensation he had when he first learned calculus. Calculus is a branch of mathematics used to study limits, derivatives, integrals, infinite series, and more. Before the invention of calculus, people were largely powerless in addressing issues related to celestial motion, fluid rotation surfaces, and curvature, among others. This severely limited humanity's understanding of universal truths and restricted their perspectives. It wasn't until the emergence of calculus that these problems were resolved. Consequently, the horizons of human civilization greatly expanded, leading to leaps in technology. Even today, although humanity is on the verge of becoming a Type 3 civilization, calculus still holds an extremely important position within the entire scientific system, making it a subject that every student must learn. Chinyu still remembers the feeling he had when he learned calculus. At that time, he was completely astonished by the brilliant ideas of the ancients, and he found himself immersed in it, feeling as if he had transcended, undergoing a transformation from within. At this moment, with Zhao Wei's narration, Chinyu felt his thoughts elevated once again, experiencing another transformation. He immediately realized that this mathematical tool called normative analysis held significance that was on par with calculus. What Chinyu did not know was that while he was astonished by Zhao Wei's brilliant ideas, Zhao Wei was equally impressed by Chinyu. Zhao Wei had never encountered a student like Chinyu before. In human civilization, almost every researcher has had the experience of being invited by schools to teach students. Zhao Wei was no exception. In his memory, students were always confused and needed him to painstakingly explain in simple language from multiple angles, repeatedly clarifying his thoughts before they could understand what he was trying to convey. But Chinyu was clearly different. Every time he articulated a concept and provided some reasoning, Chinyu could immediately grasp it completely and even apply it to other scenarios. Originally, he had planned to spend at least a month explaining the mathematical tool of gauge analysis, which was already an overestimation of Chinyu's capabilities. It's worth noting that the paper detailing gauge analysis was over 1,000 pages long, and even some of the best mathematicians within the civilization would need at least half a year to fully understand and master the ideas contained within it. Teaching Chinyu in a month would already be considered an astonishing pace, yet at this moment, only 5 hours had passed, and the course was almost complete before dawn. Zhao Wei felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. He attempted to elaborate further on his theories and ideas, but he suddenly realized that he had run out of things to say. At this moment, having fully grasped Zhao Wei's thoughts, Chinyu felt not only admiration but also a sense of reverence for Zhao Wei. This was not reverence for a single individual, but for knowledge itself. All right, Zhao Wei, you can take a break. I will thoroughly examine the structure of this mathematical tool and apply it for further analysis of the field equations. It is my honor to contribute to civilization. Zhao Wei stood up solemnly and bowed deeply to the computer. At this moment, Chinyu's attention had shifted away. All his mental focus, energy, and available computational power were devoted to analyzing the field equations. Chapter 119, Level 3 Civilization. Chinyu had discovered that gauge analysis was indeed a very useful mathematical tool, well suited for analyzing field equations. However, even Zhao Wei, the inventor, had a superficial understanding of this tool, and his usage was quite basic. The tool itself was still not fully developed and rather rudimentary. But that was all right. The most important aspect was not the later refiners, but the original pioneers. Zhao Wei's inspiration had opened up a whole new mathematical world, allowing future scholars to build great structures within it. Without Zhao Wei's inspiration, there would be nothing to build upon. Regardless, Zhao Wei truly deserved the title of the father of gauge analysis. However, from the moment Zhao Wei finished explaining his thoughts, Chinyu's understanding of this mathematical tool had completely surpassed that of Zhao Wei, and with every passing second, the gap between them was rapidly widening. This was determined by Chinyu's unique existence, which could not be replicated by anyone or anything. At this moment, Chinyu utilized this mathematical tool to elevate the research on field equations to an unimaginable level. It could be said that with this tool, just one day of research had surpassed all the accumulated studies of the past several decades. In that instant, Chinyu realized that he had theoretically mastered the ability to describe the movement and changing patterns of entangled particles. This signifies that the technology of superdistance communication is beckoning us from the near future. It is time to prepare for the first superdistance communication experiment. The experimental tools need to be specially customized, which will take time, approximately 3 months. With a command issued by Chinyu, scientists from the High Precision Mechanical Research Institute, factories, and physics laboratories, along with numerous intelligent programs and robots, immediately began their new work. The gap between theoretical physics and applied physics spans several levels. To reproduce this theoretical framework, many engineering problems need to be resolved. However, this is not an issue. It is an obstacle that can be overcome through accumulation and diligence. Unlike the elusive inspiration that relies solely on the sudden insight of a genius scientist, which cannot be controlled by human effort. Meanwhile, Chinyu once again published an article in a top scientific journal, titled On the Application of Gauge Analysis in the Field Equation System. In this article, he solemnly presented the mathematical tool of gauge analysis to all researchers. He described the specific construction method of this mathematical tool in more concise language and more rigorous logic, as well as its application in the field equation system. I can confidently inform every member of human civilization that with the advent of gauge analysis, a nearly perfect analytical method for the field equation system has finally emerged. This means that our civilization has truly opened the door to a Type 3 civilization. From this moment on, super-distance communication, energy weapons, energy shields, higher spacecraft speeds, more powerful spacecraft engines, and a more advanced human civilization are all within reach. Here, I would like to pay my highest respects to Mr. Zhao Wei, the creator of the mathematical tool of gauge analysis. He has almost single-handedly resolved the most important and challenging obstacle for our civilization to advance from Type 2 to Type 3. Every member of human civilization, including myself, should sincerely thank him for his contributions to our civilization, especially since when Mr. Zhao Wei constructed this mathematical tool, his ideas were so advanced that there were no applicable scenarios for it at the time. He endured tremendous pressure and even distanced himself from the mathematical community due to a lack of understanding. I do not intend to blame anyone or to criticize the researchers of that time for their inability to recognize talent. In fact, I was also among those who did not understand Mr. Zhao Wei back then. No one was negligent, nor did anyone harbor ill will. It was simply that ordinary people could not comprehend the thinking of a genius. Undoubtedly, Mr. Zhao Wei is that genius. He persevered and ultimately proved his value. His experience teaches us that the rigorous discipline of science will not disappoint anyone who strives to follow its principles. Mr. Zhao Wei's journey reminds me of another great scientist in the history of our civilization, Riemann. Riemann geometry is now widely known. However, when Mr. Riemann first proposed Riemannian geometry, he was similarly misunderstood. It wasn't until another great scientist discovered that only by using the mathematical tools of Riemannian geometry could he articulate his profound scientific theory known as relativity, that the value of Mr. Riemann's work truly became apparent. To this day, relativity plays a crucial role and serves as the foundation of our entire scientific system. Here, I would like to congratulate Mr. Zhao Wei and, by extension, our civilization. We have overcome this most formidable barrier, and the vast future world has opened its doors to us. From this moment on, we have genuinely entered the third level of civilization, at least on a theoretical level. In the next 3 months, our civilization will conduct its first experiment on superluminal communication. Once successful, though I truly believe it will not fail, we will have genuinely entered the third level of civilization on an applied level as well. Fellow beings, rejoice and celebrate. Because from this moment on, each of us has a brand new title, and we can proudly say that we are members of the third level of civilization, no longer belonging to the second level. At the end of this article, Chen Yu expressed his heartfelt admiration for Zhao Wei's contributions in an exuberant and generous manner. After this article was published on the website of a prominent scientific journal, within just 1 hour, Zhao Wei's name reached the ears of every individual in the community. With Chen Yu's solemn announcement that humanity has now theoretically entered the third level of civilization and will soon achieve this on an applied level, everyone was astonished. An unparalleled joy enveloped the entire solar system. At this moment, those who had fully experienced the transition from one civilization to another were filled with a singular thought. Have we truly ascended to the third level of civilization? Chapter 120. Hello, Universe Third Level Civilization. Third Level Civilization. At this moment, leaders like Mo Zhuo and Wen Wan were overwhelmed with emotion. They vividly recalled how humble their lives were when they existed within their previous civilization, not to mention ascending to the third level. Even maintaining the status of a second-level civilization was unfathomably difficult. To survive in the competition of the second-level civilization, the elite fleet of their previous civilization even ventured to the solar system to gather resources for foreign currency. Simply surviving was already such a challenge. Accumulating enough contributions to rise to the third level seemed as elusive as a mirage. Now, they had genuinely become a third-level civilization, not by depending on advanced civilizations, but through their own incremental scientific research and accumulation of knowledge, they achieved this success. The hardships faced were beyond the comprehension of anyone who had not lived through them. Now, we have truly become a level 3 civilization. At this moment, in the ruling hall of the three-eyed city, Mo Zhuo, Wen Wan, and others could no longer control their emotions and burst into tears. Otto and the other dwarves were also present. Decades had passed, yet the number of dwarves remained pitifully small, with only Otto and a few others, as no one had increased. The reason was simple. When Otto arrived in the solar system, all his followers were of the same gender, and he did not bring any members of the opposite gender from the Nanxing people. They were unable to reproduce. However, Chen Yu had promised that in the future, more members of the Nanxing people would be welcomed into human civilization. At that time, the dwarves would truly become one of the races under human civilization. no longer just a few strays living on a spaceship without a proper city. At this moment, Otto and the others felt genuine joy for the successful advancement of human civilization. Although the Nanxing civilization was originally a level 3 civilization, and now that human civilization had advanced, it was still at the very basic level, far inferior to the Nanxing civilization. However, this at least proved the potential of human civilization. Otto understood that he and his companions were tightly bound to the great ship of human civilization and could no longer separate. He had already accepted his fate. Therefore, the greater and stronger the potential of human civilization, the happier he would be. At this moment, human civilization transformed into a sea of joy. Chunyu announced that the highest award for civilization, the Human Contribution Award, would be presented ahead of schedule, and the winner was undoubtedly Zhao Wei. The Human Contribution Award is not limited to any specific field. Over the past 3 years, the 10 individuals who made the greatest contributions to civilization, regardless of whether in science, engineering, management, or other areas, would receive this award. This award is presented by Chunyu himself, and besides the honor, there would also be a series of material rewards. Winning this award is a dream for almost every human. Countless individuals have been inspired to strive for success because of it. In addition to the Human Contribution Award, the highest award in the scientific community is the Civilization Award. After the Human Contribution Award was given to Zhao Wei, it seems certain that the winner of the Civilization Award, to be held next year, would also be Zhao Wei. During the grand award ceremony, a bionic robot representing Chunyu picked up the trophy, which had been meticulously crafted and polished by Chunyu himself, and smilingly handed it to Zhao Wei. Facing the media cameras, Zhao Wei appeared somewhat shy. Chunyu sincerely said, "Congratulations." "Thank you, leader," Zhao Wei replied. The two took a commemorative photo, and this moment was broadcast live on television to every member of humanity. Following this, there was an immediate surge in the scientific community regarding the study of normative analysis as a mathematical tool. Thanks to Chunyu's organization, summarization, and in-depth research, normative analysis had become much more concise, significantly lowering the learning threshold, making it accessible even to those at the graduate level. Some basic and superficial concepts and logic have been simplified to a level that can be understood by high school students. As a result, textbooks within human civilization have undergone significant revisions. Time has passed swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, more than 2 months have gone by. During this period, under the leadership of Chunyu and supported by fundamental theories, several major engineering challenges have been overcome, leading to the birth of the first long-distance communication device from the laboratory. Unlike the delicate and compact long-distance communication device that was once piloted by Aodhwa, the long-distance communication device created by human civilization is massive, with each communication terminal the size of a house, filled with an intricate network of chips and cables. Chunyu produced 2 such devices in total. One remains in the long-distance communication laboratory, while the other was carefully transported onto a spacecraft. Subsequently, this spacecraft set sail and traveled to a location approximately 2 million kilometers from Jupiter, where it began to orbit the planet. Dozens of experimental physicists also came to this site, using conventional communication methods with a round-trip delay of over 10 seconds. The spacecraft continuously verified various detailed parameters with the long-distance communication laboratory and adjusted the 2 massive devices. After 3 full days of effort, the 2 instruments finally met the experimental conditions. At this moment, the 2 long-distance communication terminals were 1.6 million kilometers apart, with a conventional one-way communication delay of 533 seconds. Chunyu, operating the terminal located in the long-distance communication laboratory, solemnly sent out the first message, "Hello, universe." At that moment, within this terminal in the laboratory, some microscopic particles maintaining an entangled state underwent peculiar changes. Simultaneously, these changes resulted in alterations to the state of other microscopic particles at a different location due to the principles of quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is indeed remarkable. A pair of entangled particles, regardless of the distance separating them, will change simultaneously when one of them experiences a change. At least with the current technology available to Chunyu, he could not observe any time delay in these changes. This provided the theoretical possibility for long-distance communication. Originally, such changes could not transmit information because there was a lack of relevant theories to describe them. However, at this moment, Chunyu outlined the quantum field equations, and Zhao Wei provided the mathematical tool for the normative analysis of these equations, making it possible to describe the states and changes of entangled particles using understandable physical language. Chapter 121. 2 limitations at this moment. The phenomenon of quantum entanglement in Chunyu's eyes no longer seems as mysterious and magical as it once was. In his view, the reason quantum entanglement can achieve superluminal communication is fundamentally due to certain interactions at higher dimensional levels. With the continuous development of particle physics, The vast experimental data from the 20 superparticle colliders, the tireless work of over 100,000 scientists, and the scientific information produced by countless large research bases. After hundreds and thousands of years of ongoing research, Xinyu finally arrived at this work that is closer to the essence. Realizing this, and armed with the quantum field equations and gauge analysis as tools to understand and calculate this essence, Xinyu could finally utilize the phenomenon of quantum entanglement to accomplish something. The progress of science is essentially a deeper understanding of natural laws. Only with a sufficiently deep understanding can one use them to achieve their goals. For example, understanding relativity led to the creation of nuclear weapons. Understanding quantum entanglement enables the development of superluminal communication devices. At the moment when Xinyu operated the superluminal communication device on the ground to send information, the scientists stationed on the experimental spacecraft were equally nervously watching the massive equipment in front of them. A piece of information carrying a timestamp arrived at this device, triggering certain state changes in the microparticles that were in an entangled state within it. After interpreting the data through the quantum field equations and gauge analysis, it was successfully understood by electronic components and ultimately presented on the large screen in front of them. Hello, universe. The appearance of this information did not match the time displayed on the timestamp. Rather, there was a certain delay. When communicating between two locations at the speed of light, the delay time would be 533 seconds. However, at this moment, the data showed that the communication using the superluminal communication device had a time delay of 168 seconds. On the surface, it seemed that this piece of information had indeed reached superluminal speeds, yet the delay still existed. This appeared to deviate from the ultimate goal of real-time communication. But no one felt the slightest bit of disappointment. Everyone understood that this 168-second delay was not a communication delay, but rather a delay in the electronic components. The chips within the superluminal communication device needed time to interpret the state changes of the microparticles and to decode the information contained within those state changes into understandable text. This time was the source of the delay. Success. At that moment, all the scientists in the experimental spacecraft cheered together. People applauded enthusiastically, celebrated, embraced each other, and were moved to tears. Since stepping into the third level of civilization from a theoretical perspective, human civilization had finally reached the third level of civilization in terms of application. At this moment, this advancement was fully realized and complete. From any perspective, human civilization was truly a third-level civilization. Xinyu was equally excited. If he still had a mouth at this moment, he would want to shout out loud to express his inner excitement. Unfortunately, at this moment, he was just a program, existing only within the supercomputer, and had to let it go. The superluminal communication technology was indeed too important. In the past, due to severe communication delays, Xinyu, located in the Jupiter system, could only conduct very limited development on the other planets in the solar system. Sometimes, development had to be led by beings such as three-eyed individuals or dwarfs. This greatly restricted Xunyu's development progress and limited resource output. However, with the advent of long-distance communication technology, everything has changed dramatically. No matter where he is, Xinyu can now manipulate his devices in real time, achieving an efficiency increase of more than 10,000 times. This also signifies a tremendous enhancement in military strength. Similar to the past, when Xinyu first engaged in battle with the 7th Fleet of a certain civilization, communication delays led to rigid tactics, sluggish movements, and slow reactions. Such issues will no longer occur. Of course, the long-distance communication device, based on quantum entanglement technology, is not without its drawbacks. Its disadvantages mainly manifest in two aspects. First, long-distance communication cannot achieve broadcast-style communication like electromagnetic waves. Broadcast communication means that a signal source emits electromagnetic waves in a broadcast manner. As long as the receiving devices have sufficient sensitivity, any number of them can receive the information. It's like a satellite broadcasting signals in space, where multiple devices on the ground can receive the signal. This is a point-to-area method. In contrast, long-distance communication based on quantum entanglement is point-to-point. A pair of entangled quantum particles, one located at one terminal and the other at another terminal, can only maintain communication between these two terminals. The signal cannot be transmitted to a third terminal. It is not the case that if you create one terminal and I create another, we can connect as long as both devices adhere to the same technical standards and parameters. This limitation can certainly be addressed by building base stations to relay signals. But fundamentally, it remains point-to-point rather than point-to-area. The second limitation is that while quantum entanglement allows for real-time communication regardless of distance, Xinyu discovered that as the distance between a pair of entangled particles increases, their behavior and change patterns become more complex. Consequently, the field equations used to interpret their information also become more intricate, to the point where even standardized analytical methods may fail to decode the information. With the technology currently at Yu's disposal, real-time communication can only be achieved at a maximum distance of about 150 billion kilometers. Beyond this distance, while information can still be transmitted in real time, the existing mathematical capabilities are insufficient to interpret the information. Only with deeper research into the field equations and improved mathematical levels can this distance be extended. Nevertheless, despite these two limitations, the advantages of long-distance communication over traditional communication are still astonishingly significant. This technology is truly revolutionary. It is entirely appropriate to use this technology as a distinguishing mark between secondary and tertiary civilizations. Yu reflects, mastering the field equations marks a division between two entirely different worlds. I have now mastered the technology of long-distance communication. What remains is to continuously iterate, miniaturize, stabilize, and optimize it. However, the subsequent steps are merely engineering challenges, not involving foundational theories. As long as I proceed step by step, I will surely succeed. Chapter 122. Excited state. Aside from the technology of long-distance communication, I must also focus on the development of other hallmark technologies of a third-level civilization, such as energy weapons, energy shields, fusion of hydrogen, and high-thrust ion propulsion systems. At this moment, Yu is full of determination. He even realizes what kind of computer technology a third-level civilization should possess. Of course, there are computers on that spaceship, equipped with numerous chips. Most of these are quantum computing chips or electronic computing chips that Yu can understand, but he cannot comprehend the technology used by the ship's central computer. Even those who are not computer scientists, like Otto and others, cannot clarify the principles behind the operation of these computers. But at this moment, Yu finally understands the underlying principles. It is a dual computing system that integrates long-distance communication technology and quantum electronics. It must be like this. Reflecting on past research materials regarding that computer, Yu gains insight. Long-distance communication technology can also be applied to computer science and can lead to a tremendous, even epoch-making leap. At this moment, the supercomputer, built using the most advanced technology of human civilization, has its performance primarily limited by an aspect that ordinary people find hard to imagine: the speed of light. While the speed of light reaches 300,000 kilometers per second, it is still too slow. Its slowness is reflected in the following aspects. The supercomputer is composed of multiple chip units. The operating system is responsible for data distribution, and then data circulates among different chip units, each completing calculations before summarizing the results. Different chips and the main controller, as well as chip-to-chip connections, are linked via cables. The light signals transmitted through these cables travel at the speed of light. For example, if the distance between two computing chips is 10 centimeters, this distance is necessary to consider factors such as heat dissipation and structure. At 10 centimeters, the transmission of light signals takes approximately 30 billionths of a second, or about 0.33 nanoseconds, resulting in a round-trip communication delay of 0.66 nanoseconds. This is the time required for communication between two adjacent chips. Now, what if we consider the communication between the farthest two chips in a computing array? If the distance is 10 meters, the round-trip communication delay reaches 66 nanoseconds. In a supercomputer, such communication occurs tens of billions to trillions of times per second. Such a minuscule delay, when accumulated, can severely hinder the overall performance of the supercomputer. It is precisely because of this limitation that Yu's computing technology has been unable to break through. However, now, with the breakthrough in long-distance communication technology, Yu has another idea. Can long-distance communication modes be implemented internally within computers? If so, this delay could be reduced to zero, and the computer's performance could naturally be greatly enhanced. The central computer on the ship became a prototype at this moment, informing Yu that his thinking was correct. As a long-established Level 3 civilization, the Nanxing civilization was doing the same. Therefore, a new major research project needed to be added: the development of a quantum electronic dual computer that integrates long-distance communication technology. Yu silently resolved to pursue this. However, the prerequisite for this technology is the maturity of long-distance communication technology. Not only do I need to miniaturize the long-distance communication device, but I also need to make it micro-sized, so it can be installed within advanced computing systems, or even integrated onto circuit boards. Only in this way can it become practical. Although achieving this goal seems distant, Yu still felt hopeful. Once the new computer is successfully developed, my total computing power will increase at least 100-fold. By then, I will possess even greater engineering and research capabilities, allowing my technological development speed to accelerate. Yu, along with over 100,000 three-eyed people, once again passionately engaged in the technological research process. Time slowly passed. 5 years after mastering long-distance communication technology, another significant technological breakthrough based on the quantum field equations emerged. This time, It was in the military domain. Chen Yu had long known that the primary warfare method of level 3 civilizations was energy weapons. However, there were no weapons on the ship, so he had no physical reference. Inquiring with Odo, who was an officer, he could only provide limited military insights, such as which types of shells could be charged with energy, how much energy they could hold, and which type of projectile would be more effective under certain conditions. But he knew little about technical details. At this moment, Chen Yu finally understood what it meant to charge projectiles with energy. Based on the quantum field equations, Chen Yu discovered through research that certain special materials could be put into an excited state through specific methods. This excited state contained a vast amount of energy and could exist stably. However, a violent impact could disrupt this excited state, causing the energy contained within to explode instantaneously, resulting in a power output that could exceed that of projectiles relying solely on kinetic impact by dozens or even hundreds of times. This approach, while seemingly similar to packing explosives within a projectile to enhance its power, was fundamentally different. An explosion within a projectile would undoubtedly increase its volume and mass, making it impossible to accelerate to extremely high speeds. In the battlefield of space, slow projectiles have no value. They cannot hit their targets and can be easily locked onto and destroyed by the enemy. Only projectiles with sufficiently high speeds hold any value. This means that their volume and mass cannot be too large. However, a smaller mass implies insufficient energy. After all, a projectile weighing only 1 gram, even if launched at a speed of 10,000 kilometers per second, would possess very little energy. Against warships that painstakingly enhance their defenses in the interstellar battlefield, how much damage could it inflict? Enhancing power and quality will inevitably slow down speed, making it impossible to hit the target. Lowering quality and power, while increasing speed, allows for hitting the target but causes minimal damage. This creates a dilemma that cannot be resolved at the level of secondary civilizations. However, upon reaching the level of a tertiary civilization, the advent of energy weapons effectively resolves this predicament. Tertiary civilizations can achieve a perfect fusion of high power, high speed, and low quality through energy weapons. This method, developed by Chen Yu, puts the projectile material in an excited state, allowing even a small projectile to possess extremely high energy. Chapter 123, Electromagnetic Energy Cannon. To draw a rough analogy, this method is somewhat akin to heating a bullet before firing it. A heated bullet undoubtedly possesses higher energy, resulting in greater lethality. Beyond the impact, it can also burn the target due to its high temperature. Energy weapons employ special methods to place the constituent particles of the projectile in an excited state, thus giving it higher energy, which is essentially the same as a heated bullet. Of course, the increase in lethality, technical difficulty, and technological content are vastly different. At this moment, the prototype of the electromagnetic energy cannon created by Chen Yu quietly floats in space. Like the first-generation super-distance communicator, the initial electromagnetic energy cannon is also massive, measuring over 60 meters in length and weighing several thousand tons. To support its operation, Chen Yu even constructed a small nuclear fusion power station inside it. With Chen Yu's command, the fusion power station was activated, and a massive amount of electricity continuously flowed into the cannon's barrel. Alongside the electromagnetic accelerator, another device, named the exciter by Chen Yu, began to operate. Under its influence, a small projectile weighing only 1 gram, originally a light gray, gradually began to glow. It started with red, then yellow, white, and finally transformed into a bright blue. It resembled a small star, dazzling and brilliant. It was now in an excited state, possessing immense energy. This state is relatively stable, as long as it remains in a vacuum and does not come into contact with other materials. It can maintain this state for several hours until its energy is exhausted through thermal radiation. However, once a violent impact occurs, all the energy contained within will erupt in an instant. In addition to the kinetic impact, the energy released from the excited state explosion can exceed the power of 100 kilograms of conventional explosives. Notably, its total mass remains only 1 gram, and it can be accelerated to extremely high speeds through the electromagnetic accelerator, that is, the electromagnetic cannon. Launch. At Chen Yu's command, the massive power was instantly converted into kinetic energy, propelling the small projectile to move at an incredibly high speed through the electromagnetic coils. At the moment of its final launch, its speed reached over 1,000 kilometers per second. Just 2 seconds later, it directly struck a decommissioned warship acting as a target, located 2,000 kilometers away. Instantly, a strong white light erupted from the hit warship, its impact comparable to the explosion of several tons of explosives. As the smoke cleared, the nearby research vessel rushed forward, and Chen Yu saw that the warship's thick, hard armor had been torn open, creating a hole with a diameter of half a meter from a projectile weighing merely 1 gram. Is this the power of an electromagnetic energy cannon? Chen Yu couldn't help but marvel. The armor of this target ship while not cutting-edge, incorporated various composite materials and was designed with care, making it quite resilient. Yet, a small electromagnetic energy projectile pierced right through it. On the battlefield, a hole of this size would not only render the ship combat ineffective, but would at least mean it had sustained serious damage. Moreover, such damage, coupled with the splintering of the ship, would make it nearly impossible for the crew inside to escape. If luck were on their side, a single projectile could wipe out the entire crew. Just one projectile. In Chun Yu's future plans for interstellar warfare, the electromagnetic energy cannon is categorized as a conventional weapon. This means that the positioning of the electromagnetic energy cannon aligns with the traditional positioning of electromagnetic guns, where having one projectile hit the target among 10,000 shots is considered lucky. On average, a smallest class starship should fire at least 1,000 projectiles per second, otherwise, it is deemed ineffective. Such enormous quantities and the immense power of each individual projectile left Chun Yu deeply astonished. At that moment, he fully realized the vast disparity in combat power between different levels of civilizations. In the past, he even entertained thoughts of defeating a level 3 civilization's fleet by replicating the strategy that had once defeated the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization when cornered. What was the approach to defeating the Mijwa? Quantity. An overwhelming number. If numbers could overwhelm Mijwa's fleet, could they also overwhelm a level 3 civilization's fleet? Chun Yu had once harbored such lofty aspirations. However, now that he had developed level 3 civilization weapons himself, he had completely awakened to how laughable his past self had been. This gap could not possibly be bridged by sheer numbers. Just think about it. An enemy can severely injure one of their warships with a single energy projectile, while their own warships, despite desperate attacks, cannot even penetrate the enemy's defenses. Level 3 civilization warships are also equipped with energy shields, so how could this battle even be fought? One enemy warship could likely contend with over 1,000 of their own. That kind of combat is simply bullying. Chun Yu silently lamented. One side is using cheats, while the other relies solely on speed and skill. No matter how skilled the operation, it could never match up against a cheat. Fortunately, I have now mastered the technology of electromagnetic energy cannons, so I can barely say I have an edge. The related technology of electromagnetic energy cannons must be researched urgently, and we need to achieve miniaturization and stabilization as soon as possible. Only in this way can I have a fighting chance against a level 3 civilization. At this moment, not only Chun Yu is secretly amazed. As a genius commander of a level 2 civilization, Mo Zhu, who witnessed the power of the energy cannon firsthand, is also left speechless. Back when I was still in the Mozodi civilization, I used to think that if the Nanxing civilization exploited us too harshly, I could just rebel and lead troops straight to their home planet. Even if it meant a suicidal attack, I would make them pay a price. But now it seems, if I really did that, I would be the one to die, while they wouldn't even lose a layer of skin. On the other side, the dwarf Otto looked at the astonished familiar face of Mo Zhu and couldn't help but sneer. Mo Zhu, is this what shocked you? You should know that our human civilization has only developed a prototype of the electromagnetic energy cannon. The one used by the Nanxing civilization is a mature model. To be honest, the power of this prototype is impressive, but the difference is not just a little, it's particularly significant. Chapter 124. Energy Shield in response to Otto's mockery. Mo Zhu's face flushed, and he immediately retorted, "Did you research that? You just had a good start by being born into a civilization. If I had been born in the Nanxing civilization and reached your age only as a mid-level military officer, I would be too ashamed to live." Otto was furious. Mo Zhu, you claim to be a military genius every day, shamelessly holding the position of chief advisor to the military committee. Others flatter you, and you really take yourself seriously. Now our human civilization is also a level 3 civilization. When the leader has time, and we have more level 3 civilization ships, are you brave enough to fight me? I'll show you what a true military genius is. Mo Zhu, instead of getting angry, laughed. All right, when the time comes, with the same ships and the same equipment, let's have a battle so you, little dwarf, can see what a true military genius looks like. Otto gritted his teeth. Just you wait. Chun Yu witnessed this scene but did not take any action to stop it. From Chun Yu's perspective, he was glad to see various races under human civilization engage in such healthy competition. Undoubtedly, after advancing to a level 3 civilization, along with a significant revolution and enhancement in combat equipment, combat techniques and warfare methods will undergo tremendous changes. The core of warfare, of course, will not change, but the way it is presented will be completely different from before. In this situation, Otto, who received formal military education from a level 3 civilization, and Mo Zhu, who originated from a level 2 civilization but has continuously proven his military talent alongside the growth of human civilization, will have direct confrontations that evolve in unpredictable ways whenever new military equipment appears. Chun Yu himself feels a bit excited about what the outcome will be. He does not know who will win or lose between the two, But one thing he can confirm is that regardless of the outcome, the ultimate beneficiary, and the one that will see advancements in the science of warfare, will be human civilization. You may win, but I will never lose. Thus, the electromagnetic energy cannon emerged within human civilization. A significant portion of Chun Yu's computational power, along with military equipment scientists from the Three-Eyed Tribe, began attempts to miniaturize and enhance its efficiency. Similar to the ultra-distance communication devices, the electromagnetic energy cannon also underwent rapid iterations and evolution. This occupied a considerable part of Chun Yu's computing power. The rest of his computational resources were directed towards another aspect: energy shields. Energy shields are also one of the hallmark technologies of a level 3 civilization. Mastering this technology allows one to create a layer of high-energy particles enveloping a spacecraft through such a device. This particle layer is bound around the spacecraft by a magnetic field and possesses extremely high energy. It provides excellent defensive capabilities against electromagnetic projectiles or energy projectiles. Before corresponding projectiles, explosive fragments, or spacecraft debris come into contact with it, they will be ionized and then deflected by the magnetic field effect, causing them to change their trajectory and preventing them from hitting the target. The particles composing this shield are also in an excited state. This means that they are directly related to the field equations and gauge theories. Without mastering these two theories, constructing such a shield is impossible. If the energy cannon is the most powerful spear wielded by a level 3 civilization, then the energy shield is the most solid shield they possess. The two are mutually contradictory. At this moment, Chun Yu increasingly realized that no matter how advanced a level 2 civilization is, it cannot compete with a level 3 civilization. Only civilizations that have reached level 3 or higher can contend against a level 3 civilization. Just think about it. The fierce assault from one's side can be effortlessly blocked by the opponent's energy shield. The opponent can easily fire an electromagnetic energy projectile. And not only can one not evade it, but even thick armor becomes useless. How can this battle continue? Moreover, the energy shield technology is not limited to battlefield applications. As his research into energy shield technology deepened, Chun Yu increasingly understood that high sublight speed space travel also relies on energy shield technology. He knew that level 3 civilizations possessed the capability for large-scale interstellar travel. The large interstellar spacecraft they construct can achieve economic speeds of up to 50 of the speed of light, or even higher, far exceeding the 10 speed of light reached by level 2 civilizations. At such high speeds, even ordinary interstellar dust can possess significant energy. Its violent and dense impacts on the spacecraft armor can lead to a rapid decline in armor performance, eventually causing it to corrode. And even slight maneuvers can lead to the disintegration of the entire spacecraft. Additionally, impacts from ionizing radiation, deuterium nuclei, helium nuclei, and others, due to their high speeds, can also trigger intense secondary radiation, resulting in damage to the spacecraft. This is not a problem that can be solved by merely thickening the armor, unless one is willing to sacrifice a spacecraft every time they travel. To solve this problem, the only solution is the energy shield. Through the high-energy particle layer and strong magnetic field equipped on the spacecraft, the trajectory of interstellar dust and ionizing radiation can be deflected, allowing the spacecraft to safely navigate through the endless sea of stars. The maximum economic cruising speed for a second-tier civilization can only reach 10 times the speed of light, which is not just an issue of the engine, thruster performance, and fusion energy efficiency, but also a matter of spacecraft protection. In this regard, Chun Yu deeply agreed. Indeed, without reaching the level of a third-tier civilization, it is fundamentally impossible to possess the capability for large-scale interstellar travel. Moreover, mastering the technology of energy shields would signify another significant change. In the second-tier civilization stage, the primary means of providing protection to the spacecraft is the thickness of the armor. Only with sufficiently thick armor can one survive on the interstellar battlefield. Otherwise, even casual electromagnetic projectiles could easily destroy it. Armor materials are solid metals. No matter how much one tries to lighten them, they will inevitably be heavy, which leads to a significant increase in the total mass of the spacecraft. In fact, the average armor mass of the warships Chun Yu previously manufactured could account for 1/3 of the total mass of the spacecraft. However, once the technology of energy shields is mastered, could this portion of mass be saved? After reducing the mass by a full third, could the same power thrusters provide the warships with greater maneuverability, faster acceleration, more agile evasion speed, and the ability to carry more weapons and ammunition? Suddenly, Chun Yu's mind lit up. At that moment, he thought of a potential advantage that might only belong to him in the entire universe, one that other civilizations could not possibly possess. Chapter 125, Machine Gun. The importance of a spacecraft's maneuverability in the interstellar battlefield goes without saying. If a warship can accelerate faster, decelerate more quickly, and evade more nimbly, it would have an almost overwhelming advantage over the opponent. in the era of third-tier civilizations. With stronger spacecraft power, the overall mass of the spacecraft would greatly decrease due to the presence of energy shields. Thus, in the interstellar battlefield of this era, what constrains spacecraft maneuverability would no longer be the performance of the spacecraft, but rather the physical capabilities of intelligent life forms. Chunyu was confident that with the spacecraft power and hull structural strength at that time, it would be easy to achieve accelerations and decelerations of 200 meters per second, or even 400 meters per second. This means that at this moment, I am still stationary, but 1 second later, my speed could accelerate to 400 meters per second. By the second, it could reach 800 meters per second. However, this implies gravitational forces up to 20 times, or even 40 times, that of Earth. Trained humans, with the combination of load-bearing suits and high-pressure masks, can briefly withstand up to 9 times Earth's gravity. This is the limit of the human body. Data mastered by Odo shows that after using specialized equipment developed with third-tier civilization technology, the Nanxing people can briefly withstand gravity up to 12 times that of Earth. After studying the bodies of the three-eyed people, Chunyu believed that using the same equipment, they could briefly withstand about 13 times Earth's gravity. If humans were to use this equipment, they would similarly be subjected to a maximum of about 13 times the gravity of Earth. This means that no matter how powerful the spacecraft's propulsion is or how resilient its structure, the maximum maneuverability can only be maintained at around 120 to 130 meters per square second, and only for a short duration. Over time, or with greater maneuverability, beings such as the three-eyed aliens or dwarves would faint or even die. However, Chunyu is different. Human civilization is different. The spacecraft of human civilization are all remotely controlled by Chunyu. They are all unmanned spacecraft, which means that during maneuvers, there is no need to consider the endurance of living beings. As long as the spacecraft structure can withstand it and the propulsion is powerful enough, Chunyu can easily achieve maneuvers with accelerations of up to 20 times or even 40 times that of Earth's gravity. This is a unique advantage of mine. This advantage allows me to dominate other third-level civilizations even when the technological gap is not significant. Chunyu felt a surge of excitement. The information provided by Otto made him acutely aware that the Southern Star civilization is also constrained by its soldiers' inability to withstand high accelerations, which severely limits the maneuverability of their spacecraft. The Southern Star civilization has also attempted to develop unmanned remotely controlled spacecraft, using long-distance communication to operate the ships so that their warriors can avoid excessive gravitational forces. However, this approach has significant limitations. Many tasks on the spacecraft still require human intervention, and remote control is too inconvenient. For instance, assessing and resolving internal issues of the spacecraft, as well as making on-the-spot decisions in battle, all require human presence. Various factors have led to unmanned remotely controlled spacecraft still being unable to replace actual operation by warriors. They can only serve as auxiliary means on the battlefield and cannot become mainstream. But this issue does not exist for Chunyu. His immense computing power allows him to grasp every detail within the spacecraft perfectly. For him, there is no difference between remote control and on-site operation. The development of energy shield technology must be accelerated and mastered as soon as possible. Chunyu made up his mind. Time passed quickly. After numerous experiments, the relentless efforts of the three-eyed alien scientists, and continuous experiments in hundreds of dedicated research centers, the tens of thousands of engineering challenges and hundreds of thousands of components related to energy shield technology were rapidly overcome. After mastering the field equations and norm analysis, the first prototype of the energy shield generator was finally completed in the 11th year. At this moment, the long-distance communication device had undergone 11 years of iterative optimization and had shrunk to the size of a car from the Earth era. The electromagnetic energy cannon had also been reduced to the size of a room, barely feasible for installation on a spacecraft. The size of this energy shield generator was several times larger than the first-generation prototypes of the previous two devices. It was built on the surface of the planet. On Europa, Chunyu directly constructed a 100-meter-tall building. The interior of the building is hollow, with nothing else but the installation of this device. Outside the building, a much larger nuclear fusion power station was constructed to provide energy for it. At this moment, it was finally time for the first prototype to undergo its initial experiment. A helicopter roared as it flew from a distance to hover above the building. The next moment, accompanied by a surge of massive electric current and a deep buzzing sound, a faint blue energy shield suddenly appeared around the building. With the emergence of the energy shield, the surrounding air began to emit faint crackling sounds, and small electric sparks occasionally popped out. This was due to the high energy of the energy shield, causing the air to become ionized and punctured. At Chunyu's command, a machine gun of a secondary primary civilization level dropped from the belly of the helicopter. Indeed, it was a machine gun, not an electromagnetic cannon. The power of the machine gun was incomparable to that of the electromagnetic cannon, which was 1,000 times faster or more. However, despite its large size, the energy shield generator had a pitifully low power and could not withstand the attack of an electromagnetic projectile. Yu had to specially create an old-fashioned machine gun to conduct the experiment with machine gun bullets. As the machine gun roared, a large number of bullets flew toward the building. Under high-speed cameras, those bullets, before even touching the faint blue energy shield, seemed to be deflected by a strong wind, tilting in other directions. Some bullets, although also deviated from their trajectory, still flew toward the building. At this moment, under the extreme energy, the bullets were vaporized, turning into a mass of high-temperature plasma. Subsequently, influenced by the magnetic field, although they did not completely change their trajectory, their speed was reduced to nearly that of a bird, striking the building and only slightly scorching its surface. The machine gun roared for over 10 minutes, and the entire building remained unharmed. The first experiment of the energy shield generator was a complete success. At this moment, all the dwarves, including Imo Jua, Wanwan, and Ao Duo, who witnessed the experiment, stood up and gave a warm round of applause. Seeing the excited three-eyed people and dwarves, Yu couldn't help but smile wryly. Although the energy shield had been successfully developed, the investment and returns were truly disproportionate. Yu sighed. The energy supporting the energy shield, if converted to electricity, could probably support the maneuvering of a large spacecraft, yet now it can only defend against some utterly harmless machine gun bullets. However, this was still a good start. This time it was a machine gun. After a few iterations and improvements in efficiency, it might really be able to withstand electromagnetic projectiles. Even the projectiles from electromagnetic energy cannons were not without hope. He resolved to continue working hard. At this moment, human civilization had passed the originally planned 80 years of technological breakthroughs and entered the last 20 years of the century deadline. In the plan, this 20-year period was designated for preparations for interstellar voyages. The iteration of technology is certainly part of the preparatory work. Fortunately, I mastered the analysis of specifications and the field equations 9 years earlier than expected, truly stepping into a level 3 civilization. Otherwise, looking at the current situation, time might not be sufficient. However, I need to speed up now. Time is of the essence. Otherwise, after the arrival of the Sky Mother ship, the armed investigation team from the Southern Star Civilization will be here. At this moment, I really don't want to have a direct confrontation with the Southern Star Civilization. Although after advancing to a level 3 civilization, I have the capability to fight against an armed investigation team. Eliminating them would come at a cost. This, however, would mean that our existence would be completely exposed, facing waves of continuous military escalations. Before becoming truly powerful, I still prefer to keep myself hidden and develop in secret. At this stage, human civilization has truly fallen into a frenzy of the good kind. Many scientists are working tirelessly, pouring all their efforts into their work. I am equally dedicated, working frantically on the optimization and iteration of 3 key technologies: super-distance communication devices, electromagnetic energy cannons, and energy shields. At the same time, the research and development of hydrogen fusion devices and high-performance ion thrusters are also underway. With the mastery of the field equations, the theoretical obstacles for these 2 signature technologies of a level 3 civilization have been eliminated. At this moment, with my full commitment, breakthroughs in these 2 technologies have also been achieved in a short time. Among these, the successful development of the hydrogen fusion device means that the energy source for the spacecraft I am building will be more diverse. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, just like Jupiter, which is made up of more than half hydrogen. The hydrogen fusion device is not limited to just hydrogen fusion. Since hydrogen fusion is the most challenging, this device can also be used for deuterium-tritium fusion and helium-3 fusion. Just like in the era of Earth, if a car can run on 92-octane gasoline, it can certainly run on 95 or 98-octane gasoline. The success of this device also signifies a more efficient and lower-loss utilization of nuclear fusion energy, a broader energy source with higher efficiency. That is the significance of this device. The successful development of high-speed ion propulsion technology means that the spacecraft I manufacture can save propellant more effectively. With the same propellant, it can accelerate for a longer duration, leading to an increase in economic cruising speed. This is precisely why level 3 civilizations can reach speeds of 50 times the speed of light or even higher, while level 2 civilizations can only achieve around 10 times the speed of light. When I have mastered all 5 of these technologies and iterated them to a practical value, I feel that the time to build a new generation of spacecraft has finally come. At this moment, a brand new spacecraft manufacturing plant has been completed in space. Along with it, more than 100,000 upstream factories, such as new plastic factories, high-precision machining plants, cable factories, casting plants, and so on, have also been built. This constitutes a complete industrial chain. The spaceship manufacturing facility is merely the endpoint of this industrial chain. It employs new technologies at a level equivalent to a third-tier civilization, achieving significant leaps in various metrics compared to the previous outdated industrial chain. Only this facility is capable of constructing spaceships that truly belong to a third-tier civilization. This is because the spaceships of a third-tier civilization undergo comprehensive innovations across all metrics and requirements. Everything, from a single screw to a large hull plate, necessitates entirely new technology. At this moment, over 100,000 factories are operating in a fully automated frenzy. As Otto and others observe the process like watching a live game stream, Chunyu's formidable industrial capabilities are once again on full display. According to information provided by Otto, under the premise that the Southern Star civilization has all the necessary technologies, it would take at least 100 years to reconstruct an entire industrial chain, from worker training to factory construction, if there were no internal obstacles. In reality, various factions within the civilization would hinder each other, engage in negotiations, collisions, and compromises, making it unlikely that this industrial chain could be completed in less than 300 years. Yet now, from the preparation of this industrial chain to its current operational commencement, Chunyu has accomplished this in just about 5 years. Even during this 5-year period, development and implementation occurred simultaneously. Sometimes specific components were only developed and produced just as the project reached the stage where they were needed. The mutual understanding and coordination among the teams involved are seamless, leaving Otto and others dazzled. In this context, the new battleship, which originally had a construction period of at least a year, was produced in less than half a month. It is now quietly secured in the dock, ready to embark on its first space trial. The design resembles a semi-disc shape, measuring approximately 20 meters in length, 10 meters in width, and about 4 meters in height, with a total mass of around 2,000 tons. Due to a lightweight design that reduces much of the armor, this mass is achievable. Otherwise, it would have increased by about half, reaching approximately 3,000 tons. Internally, it is equipped with a nuclear fusion reactor for energy, and the propulsion system consists of one main high-speed ion thruster and 16 auxiliary ion thrusters. The conventional weapon system features the latest developed electromagnetic energy cannon, including one main cannon and 64 secondary cannons. The defense system is equipped with Chunyu's latest iteration of an energy shield system. The communication module of this spaceship, of course, employs a super-distance communication system. This means that no matter where the spaceship is, as long as it is within 150 billion kilometers, this is the limit that Chunyu's current mathematical capabilities can analyze. It can be directly and real-time controlled by Chunyu without any communication delay. Simultaneously, the properties of quantum entanglement also endow it with the ability to resist any interference, regardless of whether in a strong magnetic field, a high radiation environment, next to a star, or even with a star in between. There will be no loss in communication quality, and it is impervious to eavesdropping or any form of intrusion. This is determined by the laws of physics. Quantum entanglement communication technology is fundamentally invulnerable to hacking. In the past, when using electromagnetic wave communication, such scenarios were entirely unachievable. Not to mention the distance of a star, even a lead plate would render electromagnetic wave communication ineffective. Additionally, besides conventional electromagnetic energy cannons, it is equipped with tens of thousands of micro-missiles, laser cannons, and corresponding minesweeping and reconnaissance devices. At this moment, under the watchful gaze of the leaders of the three-eyed people and dwarves, with a command from Chunyu, the cables used to secure the spaceship were released, and the high-speed ion thrusters activated, propelling the new warship slowly into space. The energy shield was initiated, and in the next moment, the entire exterior of the spaceship was enveloped in a layer of pale blue light, leaving no blind spots. Instantly, the main ion thruster, which had previously emitted only a faint glow, brightened dramatically, shining as brilliantly as a star. Its thrust power surged from 0.1 to 100 in an instant. Simultaneously, the 16 auxiliary thrusters adjusted their thrust direction, contributing to the maneuvering of the ship. Under the watchful eye of the massive planet, this new warship, which had just been moving at approximately 10 meters per second, suddenly surged like a frenzied beast, reaching speeds of 360 meters per second in the blink of an eye, and then accelerating again to 710 meters per second. Within just a few breaths, the new warship vanished from the sight of the three-eyed leaders and dwarves, leaving only a faint point of light resembling a star, which was the glow of the ship's exhaust. Moments later, even that point of light disappeared. Emoju couldn't help but hold his breath. It was too fast, too fast. The overload gravity in that instant must have been at least 30 times standard gravity, right? The standard gravity referred to in human civilization is the gravity of Earth. 30 times Earth's gravity is enough to crush a human body, breaking bones and pushing internal organs out. This is beyond what any intelligent life could withstand. However, such immense gravity is entirely bearable for the new warship. which is constructed with high-strength materials and special pressure-resistant structures. In the internal monitoring screen, Xinyu saw that all equipment inside the ship was functioning well, with no malfunctions or even obvious deformations. In just half an hour, this warship, accelerating at full power, covered a distance of 570,000 kilometers. After this, the ship altered its course and began to decelerate. Ultimately, after another 570,000 kilometers, it came to a complete stop, following this hour-long full-power experiment. A large number of internal maintenance robots were deployed to conduct a thorough inspection of the ship. The final inspection results left Xinyu quite satisfied. Aside from some damage to the easily worn parts, everything else was within expectations. This meant that the new warship constructed by Xinyu had truly achieved combat capability. At this moment, Otto, who was observing the experiment, was so astonished that he found himself at a loss for words. Leader, this is a completely new ship designed from scratch. In the Southern Star civilization, designing and finalizing a new ship, coordinating the various components, and conducting final tests, followed by constant adjustments and iterations until it possesses combat capability, takes decades, right? Yet now, you've compressed this entire process into just a year. And the very first actual test has directly led to its finalization without any adjustments or iterations. This efficiency is simply astonishing. Even though Otto had already witnessed Chunyu's incredible abilities, he still found it hard to believe. Xinyu smiled and said, "It's not that adjustments and iterations aren't needed. There are still some areas for improvement on this warship. There may also be hidden risks that need to be identified and addressed over the long term." Otto murmured. This can span the entire life cycle of a product in the Southern Star civilization. Xinyu chuckled and turned to the eager Zhu. "How about a battle? Let's do it." At this moment, over 20,000 kilometers away from the new warship, there was a fleet of ships manufactured using peak technology of a secondary civilization. According to Zhu's assessment, the combat power of these ships even exceeded that of the most powerful warships of the Mozodi civilization of the same tonnage. There were a total of 150 ships, including 147 Stardust-class warships, 2 Nebula-class warships, and 1 Comet-class warship, the most powerful among them. In contrast, the ship operated by Chunyu was merely a Stardust-class warship at the smallest size, belonging to a third-level civilization. Otto, you should join in too. You understand the combat power of third-level civilization warships better. All right, Zhu, I'll be your advisor. Otto readily accepted and joined Zhu's team. At this moment, Zhu had gathered all the military elites except for Chunyu. From now on, you have 2 hours to decide on tactics. I will implement information shielding and won't overhear any of your discussions. Once you've determined your tactics, you can directly control those warships through the command platform. Zhu and the others just need to make tactical decisions. Chunyu will handle the specific operations. Okay, 1 versus 150. Let me see if third-level civilization warships are really that powerful. Zhu and the others began discussing specific tactics, with occasional debates arising in the circle. After 2 hours, they finally reached a consensus on how to proceed. Ready? Ready, leader, we can start now. Zhu appeared very confident. Then let us begin. Xinyu laughed heartily. And at the moment the battle commenced, he directly maneuvered the new warship, charging forward at full power towards the fleet ahead. Chapter 128. Real combat in just a few minutes. This third-tier civilization-level Stardust-class warship accelerated from a relatively stationary state to a speed exceeding 100 kilometers per second, and it continued to increase rapidly. At the same time, the electromagnetic energy cannon was activated, and within just 1 second, 64 secondary cannons each fired 10 rounds, launching a total of 640 projectiles, each weighing 0.1 grams and in an excited state. The muzzle velocity of these projectiles reached over 3,000 kilometers per second, allowing them to rain down on the enemy warship in just a few seconds. As this new type of warship began its maneuver, the 150 warships controlled by Zhu and others also sprang into action simultaneously. Chunyu had originally thought they would rely on their numerical superiority to rush forward recklessly, attempting to breach the defenses of this new warship before their own forces were completely annihilated. In Chunyu's view, this was almost the only viable combat strategy with a chance of winning. However, to Chunyu's surprise, those warships did not rush forward. Instead, they scattered at full power in all directions, like stray dogs, desperately fleeing in every possible direction. Was this to prevent being taken down all at once? A realization dawned on Chunyu. He had not overheard Zhu and the others' previous discussions, so he was unaware of their plans. At that moment, he could only infer their strategy bit by bit from the battlefield information. Delaying time was futile. Chunyu shook his head in his heart. No ship could escape in the face of such strong maneuverability from the new warship. He quickly adjusted the muzzle of the electromagnetic energy cannon, began to lock on at targets again, and easily destroyed 2 old-style warships with a few shots. Although this was an exercise, those old warships had limited value, and Qin Yu felt no regret in destroying them. However, this delay allowed the remaining warships to escape even further. After destroying a few more, Qin Yu realized that all the warships in the current direction had been cleared. To attack the remaining warships, he would have to change direction and pursue them again. Without hesitation, he decisively turned his course, reactivated the ion thrusters, and began to chase vigorously. Thus, after pursuing in one direction for a while, he would turn, slow down, and then accelerate to chase in another direction. After annihilating the warships in that direction, he would slow down, accelerate again, and repeat the chase. After several repetitions and destroying about 60 warships, Qin Yu gradually caught on. That guy Mo Zhu was deliberately stalling for time, trying to exhaust my fuel. Mo Zhu and the others indeed had the intention of dragging out the time. However, this plan was not as futile as Qin Yu had initially thought. It was genuinely effective. They clearly understood that in a direct confrontation, even with 150 old warships, they could not match a single new warship. The only possibility of victory lay in scattering and forcing him to maneuver frequently. Frequent full-power maneuvers consumed the most energy, and they were attempting to wear him down with this strategy. Qin Yu was somewhat amused and exasperated. This Mo Zhu really has some ideas. Being able to come up with such a method. If it weren't for my extensive experience, I might have fallen for your trick. This tactic was indeed difficult to deal with, as everything was almost out in the open, akin to a straightforward scheme. However, after a moment of contemplation, Qin Yu immediately had an idea. You want me to waste energy trying to wear me down? I'll just conserve my usage. I don't need to maneuver frequently. I can still take you down. Qin Yu quickly changed his strategy. In the past, he would only start firing when the new warship was within 10,000 kilometers, as that was the distance where the hit rate could be slightly higher. At greater distances, the projectile took too long to reach its target, making it easier for the opponent to evade. But now, Qin Yu replaced the main cannon's 1-gram projectiles with the secondary cannon's 0.1-gram projectiles. Originally, both types of projectiles had a muzzle velocity of 3,000 kilometers per second. However, now that the projectile mass was reduced by a factor of 10, the muzzle velocity instantly increased to 5,000 kilometers per second. Qin Yu began to maneuver at what appeared to be a slower pace compared to before, and he no longer needed to close the distance to 10,000 kilometers before opening fire. Instead, he started firing at distances of 150,000 kilometers or even farther. Due to the increased projectile speed, although the distance was greater, the hit rate could still maintain its previous level. Suddenly, the situation shifted. The energy consumption of the new warship dropped significantly, yet the speed of demolishing the old warships did not slow down. In front of Qin Yu, Mo Zhu and the others noticed the change in tactics and shook their heads in dismay. After a brief discussion, they also altered their strategy. The warships no longer fled but instead launched a full frontal assault from all directions against the new warship. Were they going all out for a desperate fight? Qin Yu smiled inwardly. Realizing they couldn't escape, they had decided to disregard their lives and fight desperately, hoping luck might alter the situation. But it was futile. A barrage of electromagnetic projectiles came whistling in, including the main cannon from that Comet-class warship, with projectiles weighing as much as 6 grams. Such projectiles possessed terrifying energy. Even striking a mountain would create a hole. However, facing the fully operational energy shield and the strong magnetic field deflection, these heavy projectiles were obediently diverted and could not hit their target. Along with the electromagnetic projectiles came dozens of high-energy laser beams. The energy shield could defend against physical attacks, such as explosive fragments and electromagnetic projectiles, but it could not defend against laser beams. However, it was not a problem. The new armor, made with Tier 3 civilization technology, had lower kinetic resistance but extremely high laser resistance. Most of the laser energy was reflected away, and a small portion that was absorbed did not cause any visible damage to the armor. As for miniature missiles, they posed even less of a threat than the electromagnetic projectiles. Amidst the hail of fire, the new warship moved leisurely and confidently. When that Comet-class flagship was hit by a series of attacks from Qin Yu, struck solidly by hundreds of electromagnetic energy projectiles, it ultimately triggered a tremendous explosion, marking the end of this live-fire exercise. The fleet, consisting of 150 warships, including a flagship of a secondary peak civilization, was completely annihilated by a new type of warship. What do you think, Emojoa Oduo? Emojoa wore a bitter smile and shook his head repeatedly, saying, "There's no way to fight back, really no way." In Qin Yu's eyes, Emojoa's command abilities were already outstanding. Even for himself, it was likely he couldn't do better. Yet, it was still of no use. Chapter 129. Thunder Dragon. Once it was confirmed that the new type of warship met all expected performance standards, Qin Yu immediately activated the combat mode. At this moment, Qin Yu felt extremely insecure. Without the protection of a powerful fleet, He always worried that one day an alien civilization would arrive in the solar system, threatening their very existence. Chen Yu did not delay on this matter at all. Meanwhile, the entire three-eyed and dwarf civilizations expressed strong support for Chen Yu's decision. If Chen Yu felt insecure, those other civilizations that were tightly bound to his war machine, unable to escape, felt even less secure. A powerful human civilization aligned with everyone's interests. Although there was not much they could actually do, Chen Yu was quite satisfied with this attitude. Thus, a massive construction operation began once again. In the past, Chen Yu had also initiated large construction projects, but this time the scale was particularly large. The main difference from before was that, with the support of super-distance communication technology, Chen Yu could finally extend his reach across the entire solar system and develop the entire solar system. The bases on Mercury, the planet closest to the Sun, and on distant dwarf planets that are billions of kilometers away, where even light takes nearly 4 days to reach, could achieve precision cooperation under Chen Yu's command. Centered in the Jupiter system, with a delay of no more than 1 microsecond. This was unimaginable in the past. Previously, Chen Yu had to send three-eyed people to these 2 bases, and the communication via electromagnetic waves would take over 8 days for back-and-forth coordination. The inefficiency was evident. Chen Yu converted his entire massive fleet of warships into interstellar transport ships, making use of what was available. Together with the existing transport ships, he instantly had a large transport fleet of over 100,000 vessels. Various bases, supercomputing centers, mining centers, factories, and so on blossomed across the planets. The 4 gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, became energy centers with rich energy reserves, while Mercury, Venus, the Earth asteroid belt, Mars, and the 3 rocky planets along with Earth's remnants became resource centers. Long-distance communication connected everything, with spacecraft loaded with various supplies or energy shuttling day and night. Millions of supporting factories roared continuously, producing components that were then delivered to 16 spacecraft manufacturing centers located at different points in the solar system, leading to the production of new warships. At this moment, the goal of achieving integration within the solar system was truly realized. Meanwhile, the leader continued to focus on the optimization and iteration of various technologies involved in the new warships. Although some, like his peers, believed that the current products were already excellent and required no further optimization, he disagreed. In his view, optimization has no end, as long as he exists. The pursuit of technology continues. Under such circumstances, the high-speed ion thruster was expanded to over 100 models, named things like Thunder Dragon 1, Thunder Dragon 2, and so on, up to Thunder Dragon 117. Among these models, some were most suitable for equipping Stardust-class warships, others for small fast transport ships, large transport vessels, and manned spacecraft, among various other applications. Energy shield generators also developed over 50 specialized models, named Divine Light 1, Divine Light 2, and so forth, up to Divine Light 56, covering various types of spacecraft and even ground bases. Long-distance communication devices, fusion reactors, and energy cannons followed suit. Through the segmentation and optimization of different application scenarios, he unearthed tremendous potential in performance improvements, even without breakthroughs in fundamental theory, achieving significant advancements within the existing framework. The combat spacecraft were constantly iterating. The initially built warship, once deemed nearly perfect by his peers, was now considered outdated and discarded by many, as he had made improvements in tens of thousands of subtle areas. Each individual improvement had a negligible impact, but collectively, they brought about substantial enhancements to overall performance. Sometimes, there were amusing situations. Just days ago, his latest improved version of the spacecraft was regarded as a treasure by his peers, who praised it and couldn't get enough of it. Yet, within days, when another new version emerged, they would scoff at the previous model. With repeated instances, his peers became desensitized to this rapid iteration, even subconsciously believing that such a situation was normal in human civilization. In the past, during the Mozodi civilization, it felt like a group of snails were working. If he were to return to the Mozodi civilization now, he feared he would be driven to frustration by his compatriots within a day. He chuckled bitterly, remarking that they were too sluggish, too lazy, and inefficient. Even Otto from the Southern Star civilization felt the same. The Southern Star civilization wasn't much better than the Mozodi civilization. In such a situation of simultaneous improvement and large-scale production, within just a few years, Chen Yu commanded a massive fleet of over 100,000 warships. According to Odo, the total number of warships under the old Tier 3 civilization, known as the Southern Star civilization, was only around 100,000. Chen Yu's efficiency once again shocked the already numb Zhua and Odo. In just a few years, a fleet equivalent to the total number of warships of a Tier 3 civilization had emerged. Odo couldn't help but smile wryly. In the Southern Star civilization, A fleet of 2,000 warships would take at least 10 years just for the initial bidding process. A fleet of 2,000 warships involves countless interests, numerous factories, capital, officials, and various profit motives, making it nearly impossible to speed up the process. The three-eyed beings and dwarves were amazed. But Chunyu didn't have time to bask in this small achievement. At this moment, his vision expanded to a higher level. It was time to develop dwarf planet-class warships. Chunyu secretly made up his mind. Chapter 130. Humanity as early as the Tier 2 civilization stage. Chunyu had already confirmed the immense role of flagship-class warships on the battlefield. It can be said that, under the same technical parameters, environment, tactical operation level, and numbers, a fleet with a Comet-class warship is fundamentally on a different level of combat power compared to a fleet without one. In the Tier 2 civilization era, this was true for Comet-class warships, and now, in the Tier 3 civilization era, it is equally true for dwarf planet-class warships. At the same time, with the plethora of new technologies available, the opportunity to build a truly practical dwarf planet-class warship, rather than a mere oversized, useless target, has truly matured. The information provided by Odo indicates that both the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization fleets also possess such flagship-class ships. The Southern Star Civilization has 8, serving as the flagships of its 8 major fleets. The Blue Moon Civilization has confirmed 6 flagships, with a suspected 7th already constructed, although there is no solid evidence. Their flagships may have different names and classifications that certainly differ from those of human civilization. However, Chunyu knows that their roles within the fleet are the same as those of his dwarf planet-class warships. In Chunyu's plan, this yet-to-be-constructed dwarf planet-class warship will have an astonishing, unprecedented length of 650 meters, a width of around 400 meters, and a height of 150 meters. Its total tonnage will reach an incredible 500,000 tons, even after removing all life support equipment and supplies, utilizing energy shield technology, and significantly reducing armor mass. For this unparalleled dwarf planet-class warship, Odo provided a wealth of beneficial references based on the flagship-class warships of the Southern Star Civilization during the design process, while Imozwa, acting as a military commander, proposed numerous performance specifications. In the end, Chunyu took a comprehensive approach, incorporating his own requirements to complete the design drawings and confirm the technical details. Once everything was finalized, he wasted no time and immediately began the actual construction. The spaceship factory previously used for building Comet-class warships was upgraded and expanded by Chunyu to take on the construction tasks. This time, the construction followed the same model as before, with research and development occurring simultaneously with building. The flagship spaceship was exceptionally large, carrying significant responsibilities and holding great importance, which correspondingly led to high performance requirements. Some of the performance specifications could not yet be achieved with the products Chunyu was creating. So he prioritized constructing the feasible components first while the research institutions focused on solving the remaining issues, striving to avoid delaying the overall construction progress. This was akin to road construction in the past, where workers would study maps while laying the road. Such an approach would be unimaginable in ordinary civilizations. But in human civilization, it became a reality and felt completely natural. After 2 full years, which might seem slow to other civilizations but was quite efficient for human civilization, the first dwarf planet-class warship was finally completed. At this moment, as Chunyu watched the massive warship slowly leave the dock and sail into the vast starry sea, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Reflecting on the past 2 years, even with his immense computational power, he felt somewhat exhausted. The increase in the ship's tonnage involved far more than just weight. There were numerous issues to address, and not all of them could be identified from the start. Many problems emerged during the construction process. For instance, a simple heat dissipation issue, which was not a problem on the Comet-class warship, became significant when the spaceship was scaled up to dwarf planet class due to the length of the pipes. Ignoring it could lead to explosions under extreme conditions, crippling the entire warship. There were countless similar problems. Whenever one arose, Chunyu and the scientists had to work tirelessly until they resolved it before they could finally relax. Under these circumstances, the warship was finally built. Looking at the enormous vessel, which resembled an island, Chunyu felt a deep sense of pride after letting out a sigh of relief. The ship featured a disc-shaped structure, equipped with 18 main cannons, each capable of firing 2 rounds per second, with each round weighing up to 25 grams. This caliber of projectile could not be launched by any other class of spaceship. Additionally, it housed 120 electromagnetic energy cannons, which could fire 3 rounds per second with projectile weights of up to 10 grams, equivalent to the main cannons of the Comet-class warship. But on this vessel, they could only be classified as secondary weapons. The number of small electromagnetic energy cannons was even greater, totaling 560. There are more than 130 laser cannons of various sizes, and in addition, The number of interstellar missiles, ranging from large to small, far exceeds that of a certain class of warship. Inside, there are 2 nuclear fusion reactors, and the energy shield generators are designed in a segmented manner, with a total of 6 generators providing protection for the hull. If one of them is damaged, it's not a problem, as there are 6 backup units available. The number of thrusters is even greater, with a total exceeding 10,000, including large, medium, and small ones. The different combinations of these thousands of thrusters allow for great flexibility, achieving extreme maneuverability of up to 200 meters per square second. While this maneuverability may not compare to that of smaller ships, it is still quite impressive given its massive size and weight. Looking at this warship, enveloped in light and resembling a giant beast of space, Chinyu seems to envision a future where it dominates the interstellar battlefield. Let's give you a name. From this moment on, your name will be Humanity. After the construction of the Humanity was completed, Chinyu did not rest. A year later, the second dwarf planet-class warship, named Civilization, was completed. At this time, Chinyu finally fulfilled his promise. Emojua, Otto, the long-awaited confrontation exercise can now begin. Each of you will command 1 dwarf planet-class warship, with the remaining 50,000 warships. Chinyu announced this news. Aha, Emojua, prepare to meet your end. Otto exclaimed with excitement, seemingly eager to teach Emojua a lesson. Emojua was equally thrilled. I will make you understand that those who can only reincarnate have no right to act pretentious in front of me. Chapter 131. Preparing for the voyage. Over the years, the number of the dwarf race has remained unchanged at 20 individuals. However, through continuous learning, these 20 have transformed from ordinary beings and gradually matured, with 9 becoming scientists and the remaining 11 becoming military strategists. The number of the 3-eyed race has been steadily increasing, now reaching nearly 3 million. Among them, aside from the older generation of military strategists like Emojua and Wenwan, several members of the 3-eyed race have also grown and joined the military advisory group. Thus, led by Emojua, the 3-eyed race, and led by Otto, the dwarfs divided into factions, preparing for a significant confrontation. This exercise maintained the previous format. Chinyu acted as the command platform, responsible for receiving orders from both commanders and executing them in practice. In this process, Chinyu remained impartial, offering no opinions on handling but faithfully executing orders. Additionally, for this exercise, Chinyu set the warship destruction rate at 2, meaning that among every 100 warships, 2 could be genuinely destroyed. Although this is somewhat lower than before, it still significantly enhances the realism of the war. While carrying out large-scale construction tasks, Chinyu simultaneously operated a spacecraft of a third-tier civilization according to the directives of both parties, engaging in fierce battles within the vast solar system. Throughout this process, Chinyu continuously observed and collected all available data from the battlefield. He had never encountered the warfare mode of a third-tier civilization before, which meant that if a conflict with such a civilization truly occurred, he would clearly be at a disadvantage. However, with the large-scale clashes between the 2 sides, both Otto and Emoju were rapidly evolving and adapting to the new battlefield environment, at the cost of numerous destroyed ships. As a platform, Chinyu undoubtedly reaped the most benefits. This large-scale war lasted for 2 years, and only came to an end after a decisive battle around Uranus. Otto had exhausted his last mobile forces, and faced with the nearly exhausted Emoju side, he ultimately had to reluctantly announce surrender. Yet, Otto was still somewhat unconvinced. Emoju, you were just lucky. Under normal circumstances, you could never be my opponent. In Chinyu's view, there indeed was an element of luck involved. During the war, Otto organized a surprise attack fleet to target Emoju's supply lines. The surprise fleet had initially annihilated Emoju's escort ships, but coincidentally, a hydrogen bomb inside one of the ships was detonated, an occurrence as unlikely as winning the lottery. The unprepared surprise fleet suffered significant losses, with 6 ships confirmed destroyed and forced to retreat from the battlefield. This surprise operation was declared a failure. As a result, Otto's previously planned feigned defeat turned into a real defeat. Faced with Emoju's fleet, which had ample logistical support, Otto had to increase his efforts multiple times to rescue his beleaguered fleet, turning a skirmish into a decisive battle, ultimately leading to failure. Confronted with Otto's dissatisfaction, Emoju disdainfully replied, "Unexpected events are common on the battlefield. Don't talk about bad luck. If it were me, I would at least have a backup plan. What about you? You don't even have a backup plan. Given the circumstances, if I had the power to devise a backup plan, I wouldn't even have attempted a sneak attack. I would have gone straight for the kill." Otto sighed. "Forget it, it was just bad luck. The heavens have forsaken me. It's an unjust war." Seeing Otto concede, Emoju's side left with satisfaction and held a grand celebration ceremony in Three-Eyed City that very day. For them, defeating the previous ruling civilization was indeed a momentous occasion worth celebrating. Meanwhile, Chinyu, over the course of this 2-year war, had gathered an enormous amount of war data at the cost of around 2,000 destroyed ships, gaining profound insights into the warfare forms and combat techniques of third-tier civilizations. This was incredibly valuable for Chunyu, almost a windfall. After all, 2,000 ships could be constructed in a relatively short time. Unfortunately, time was too tight at this moment. Otherwise, they could have another match, giving them more time, and even fully simulating a real combat scenario. Without damage rate restrictions and using live ammunition, conducting everything as an actual warfare. Such an exercise would surely yield better results. Chunyu felt a sense of regret. While both sides were busy with the war, he had already begun his all-out shipbuilding efforts. Of course, these were no longer warships, but other types of spacecraft. Chunyu had started preparing for a true interstellar voyage, aiming to leave the solar system. Among the ships he was building were heavy interstellar transport vessels with a single transport capacity of up to 6 million tons. Manned spacecraft simulating the environments needed for the three-eyed and dwarf races, and, of course, aerospace carriers. When the time came to leave, all the spacecraft that did not have independent interstellar travel capabilities would be secured on the aerospace carrier and taken away. In addition, large-scale resource collection operations had already begun. Various high-purity metal ores, mechanically processed components, and specialized parts were all being stockpiled by Chunyu. According to his plan, in about 6 years, human civilization would set sail and temporarily leave the solar system. It was termed temporary because Chunyu believed that one day he would return, and it would be a legitimate return. However, before the final departure, there was one more matter he needed to confirm. Leaving the solar system to temporarily avoid danger for the safety of civilization was necessary, but where would they go after leaving? Nearly a century ago, after determining the strategy to leave the solar system, discussions about this question had been ongoing within the civilization. Chunyu conducted extensive modeling and calculations, while the three-eyed and dwarf races provided numerous suggestions, engaging in continuous discussions, debates, and even arguments. Yet, until now, this question had not been definitively resolved. Now, Chunyu felt that the time to finalize this question had arrived. It could no longer be delayed. He convened another meeting attended by all the high-ranking officials of the civilization. So, where should we go in 6 years? Chapter 132, Rules and Loopholes at this moment. Chunyu and human civilization faced two choices. First, find a way to integrate into the alliance system, leveraging the protection of the alliance while secretly developing power and building strength. At this point, Chunyu had preliminarily identified an opportunity to join the alliance system. If this plan were executed, there was a great chance for human civilization to successfully join. However, this would inevitably mean significant restrictions and a lack of freedom. There would be oversight and suppression from the dominant civilizations, as well as secrets that needed to be kept, and at times, they might even have to execute missions to eliminate evil civilizations. This was the term used for civilizations outside the alliance. In short, there were many rules and regulations, and one misstep could lead to exposure, making escape impossible. It was akin to walking a tightrope. Chunyu had to carefully maintain a balance of power between both sides. Once that balance was disrupted, it could lead to irreparable consequences. The second option is to break away from the alliance and become what the alliance refers to as an evil civilization. This certainly offers a lot of freedom and no constraints. However, it would also face endless pursuit and harassment from the alliance civilizations. If it were just that, Chunyu wouldn't be too afraid. At worst, he could run away and be more diligent about it. As long as he wasn't too unlucky, he could always find a way to survive. But the critical issue lies in the location of the solar system, which is too deep within the alliance's sphere of influence. According to Ajuo, most so-called evil or free civilizations are clustered at the edges of the galaxy or at the borders of 5th and 6th level civilizations, struggling to survive in the cracks. The solar system is over 10,000 light-years away from the edge of the galaxy, and even the nearest area with weak oversight is still over 3,000 light-years away. Moreover, Ajuo does not know the specific location, only the approximate distance. After all, he is merely a third-level civilization being and knows very little. Given Chunyu's current third-level civilization strength, calculating with the maximum economic cruising speed of 50 times the speed of light, traveling such a distance is simply unrealistic. If he chooses to break away from the alliance, the only feasible plan would be to run towards the areas with weaker oversight while concealing himself, simultaneously seizing every opportunity to develop, hoping for divine favor to reach there before being eradicated by the alliance civilizations. This is essentially walking a tightrope. Both choices are extremely perilous. Yet Chunyu must make a decision between the two. It truly is a world of bad options. Chunyu bitterly smiled to himself. I have to pick the least terrible option among these two that both look so bad. Ajuo Emojua and others also realized that this meeting would be the last discussion on this topic. In other words, a conclusion must be reached in this meeting. This was a discussion that did not involve any interests or positions. The high-ranking members of the three-eyed and dwarf races divided into two camps purely from the perspective of the civilization's future, engaging in heated debates. Some supported temporarily joining the alliance and then lying low, believing that choosing to run away posed too great a risk and an uncertain future. Others argued for running away, stating that even with the dangers, it was better than joining the alliance and facing certain death. They did not believe that once they joined the alliance, they could ultimately hide successfully. Both sides held their ground, arguing without resolution. Before long, 3 days of discussion had passed, and both sides still had not come to an agreement. Ultimately, the decision-making power on this issue had to be left to Chunyu, who would make the final decision. During this discussion period, Chunyu quietly observed. Through the arguments from both sides, he felt he had grasped every advantage and disadvantage of these two choices. It was time to make a decision. In the large conference hall, over 100 high-ranking members of the civilization sat solemnly, gazing at the robot representing Chunyu, waiting for him to determine the path and fate of their civilization. Chunyu slowly looked over the high-ranking members and said gravely, "I have decided to join the alliance." Chunyu originally expected to hear murmurs in the venue, but to his surprise, it was completely silent, with not a single sound. This clearly indicated that, regardless of the decision Chunyu made, they were already prepared to accept it. Furthermore, they adhered to Chunyu's teachings before a decision is made. Debates and arguments against opposing viewpoints are acceptable. However, once a decision is made, everyone's mission becomes one of obedience and execution. Even if they disagreed with the decision, they had to restrain themselves. Chunyu was quite satisfied with their reactions. I know many people do not understand this decision. In fact, the most important reason for making this decision is simple. He paused for a moment and continued. Lower civilizations hold no significance for higher civilizations. This is something everyone understands. It is precisely for this reason that the alliance exists. Higher civilizations need lower civilizations to act as soldiers to eliminate evil civilizations. Here, I prefer to refer to these evil civilizations as free civilizations. Free civilizations are indeed free and can develop technology without restraint. However, one must consider that the world of free civilizations may not be much better than that of the alliance. At least within the alliance, there are rules. As long as one abides by the rules, one can survive. In the world of free civilizations, there are no rules at all. In such circumstances, when a lower free civilization encounters a higher free civilization, the outcome will likely be just as tragic. Some may think that since everyone is a free civilization and came together to resist the alliance, they should coexist peacefully and help each other. But, unfortunately, Chunyu shook his head. I do not believe it will be that way. I think the competition and slaughter among free civilizations will be even more brutal. It is entirely a dark jungle where all civilizations will stop at nothing to survive. Moreover, if a level 5 civilization were to advance to a level 6 civilization, would it lead the others in resisting the alliance? No, it would not. They would unhesitatingly join the alliance, becoming beneficiaries, and then wipe out their former companions who were also free civilizations. They fear the emergence of another level 6 civilization that would dilute their own interests, much like what the alliance did to free civilizations before their advancement. Do not harbor illusions about the world of free civilizations. Their survival conditions will be even harsher than those within the alliance. Although the rules of the alliance are harsh, no matter how bad the rules are, they are better than having no rules at all. And as long as there are rules, there are loopholes to exploit. Our human civilization has immense potential, but we are still very weak. In our current weakness, we must utilize the rules and exploit the loopholes to have the right to survive. This is the reality we face. Chapter 133. Kuanpeng 1 Chunyu's words and analysis prompted deep reflection among the senior officials of the attending civilizations. They certainly understood that the environmental conditions of free civilizations were equally harsh. However, they wondered just how much worse could it get, and whether it could really be worse than that of the alliance. However, Chunyu believes that the environment there is even worse than that of the alliance. Our weakness determines that we must choose between these two equally terrible options. This is the sorrow of being weak, and the price that comes with it. Face the reality. My compatriots, I believe that one day, we will no longer have to face such a situation. When confronted with choices we do not want, we can have the courage and confidence to say no. This matter is thus decided. No matter who has different opinions, at this moment, they must be reserved, must comply with, and execute the established decision. As for how to join the alliance next, how to conceal ourselves, and how to exploit loopholes in the rules, we will proceed according to the previous plans. This concludes the meeting. After this, the debates among the intelligent beings regarding future choices vanished in an instant. Everyone accepted this outcome and began to do what they could under this option. We have now entered the final preparation stage before departure. Chunyu's tasks are reduced to 2. First, shipbuilding. Warships, crewed spacecraft, engineering vessels, motherships, transport ships, aviation ships, research vessels, reconnaissance ships, and various other types of warships are being constructed frantically by Chenyu. Second, stockpiling supplies. Various kinds of materials, minerals, components, compounds, and energy resources. These are not basic resources, such as iron ore or copper ore, as that would be too wasteful of transport capacity. Chenyu needs to forecast demand and either purify them to a very high degree or directly manufacture various components. He is trying to keep as much material and energy consumption within the solar system as possible. After all, the resources and energy here can be considered infinite. But once we leave the solar system and enter the vast expanse of space, no replenishment will be possible. The entire Triad population has also mobilized, traveling to various places in the solar system under the transport of crewed spacecraft, executing numerous tasks on behalf of Chenyu, even saving him up to 0. 5. In computational power consumption. It should be noted that in today's era of immense computational power, 0. 5 can accomplish a great deal. For the future of civilization and their own future, these Triad beings are disregarding everything. Yet even so, those heavy transport ships seem to be like black holes that can never be filled. No matter how much material is brought in, they consume it all without a trace. The fleet of long-range ships docked in the Jupiter system sees countless mineral and resource ships laboriously arriving from all corners of the solar system, unloading their cargo before swiftly departing. Ferries and transport ships shuttle back and forth here all day long, filled with a busy atmosphere. Initially, the fleet was not very large, with only about 100 heavy transport ships docked. However, over time, the number of heavy transport ships gradually increased, and later, various other types of ships also converged, making its scale increasingly massive. When the newly constructed spacecraft carrier by Chenyu joined the fleet, the long-distance fleet finally resembled a proper interstellar exploration fleet. Yes, human civilization has finally acquired its own spacecraft carrier. It is a massive ship with a length of 17 kilometers, featuring a central cylindrical body surrounded by sprawling branches. The diameter of the cylindrical body reaches 50 meters, and it is equipped with various instruments and devices. The remaining space can accommodate personnel and store materials that require special environmental conditions. The outer branches vary in length from 500 to 800 meters. Initially, these branches were bare, but soon leaves began to sprout. Each leaf represents a spacecraft. Through various fixed facilities, both large and small spacecraft are attached to these branches, with a single branch capable of holding up to 50 spacecraft, depending on their size. There are a total of 120 branches on this spacecraft carrier, meaning that in extreme conditions, one spacecraft carrier can transport up to 6,000 small combat ships. These small combat ships are highly maneuverable, capable of accelerating and decelerating at hundreds of meters per second, but they are not suitable for long-distance interstellar travel as their engines and thrusters are not designed for that purpose. The number of 6,000 combat ships is sufficient to transport a large interstellar fleet, which at times could even annihilate a civilization of equal standing. If it were to carry materials, this spacecraft carrier, aside from its own weight, could transport up to 1.5 billion tons of various supplies in one go. Its maximum economical cruising speed can reach 55 times the speed of light. Under full load, it can perform 3 acceleration and deceleration maneuvers, accelerating to 55 times the speed of light and then decelerating to a stop. This capability is quite impressive. This performance even surpasses that of the spacecraft carrier from another civilization, known as Cloudlight. However, this does not imply that Chenyu's technological level has surpassed that civilization. In fact, Chenyu has a very clear understanding of himself. He knows that there is still a significant gap between him and that civilization. The reason his spacecraft carrier can surpass theirs is mainly due to his willingness to invest resources without hesitation. This is a spacecraft carrier, a strategic vessel that can truly be regarded as a monumental achievement of civilization. Chenyu plans to construct a total of 30 such spacecraft carriers. When the first spacecraft carrier, Kunpeng No. 1, was completed and commissioned, the three-eyed individuals, including Mo Zhu and Wen Wan, arrived at the fleet and took a shuttle to its side. Faced with this colossal ship, Mo Zhu momentarily forgot what to say. He simply gazed in awe, like an artist admiring a magnificent piece of art. Afterward, the group entered the interior of Kunpeng No. 1, along the long corridor, gazing at the seemingly endless passage. Observing one precision machine after another, and touching the silver-white walls, tears suddenly streamed from the 3 eyes of Mo Zhu. Humanity now has its own space carrier. His voice was choked with emotion. Up to this moment, he still clearly remembered why he had led the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization across light years to the solar system. At that time, the Mozodi civilization hoped to introduce an outdated model of space carrier from the Nanjing civilization to strengthen its military power, improve its position in the competition among civilizations, and avoid the risk of extinction. However, this attempt ultimately failed due to conflicts of interest within the civilization's internal factions. Thus, Mo Zhua led the 7th Fleet to the solar system to gather minerals in exchange for foreign currency to alleviate the civilization's difficulties. Now, the newly constructed space carrier by humanity was right in front of Mo Zhua, within reach. Although its technological level could not compare to that of the Nanjing civilization. Due to the generous allocation of resources, this space carrier could serve as a main force even within the Nanjing civilization. How could Mo Zhua not feel emotional at this moment? And this was just the first space carrier. Under Chen Yu's full effort. The second space carrier soon joined the fleet, followed by the third and fourth. A normal civilization wouldn't require so many space carriers. The Nanjing civilization only had about 14. 14 space carriers were more than sufficient to meet the needs of the civilization. Yet, Chen Yu built 30 in one go. The main reason was that humanity's number of warships far exceeded that of a normal civilization. At this moment, Chen Yu's computational power was fully utilized, and he could control only around 50,000 warships at the same time. However, he had built a total of 160,000 warships across various classes, more than 1.5 times that of the Nanjing civilization. Chen Yu figured that even if he couldn't control them all temporarily, having them as reserves would be beneficial. After all, when he faced Mo Zhua before, wasn't he at the sheer number that overwhelmed him and turned the tide of battle? To transport so many warships, the number of space carriers had to be increased. At this moment, at the Jupiter base, 30 space carriers had already been commissioned, numbered from Kunpeng 1 to Kunpeng 30. A large number of warships had begun their fixed operations, fixed in place like leaves on the branches of the space carriers. 200 heavy transport ships were also constructed. Each transport ship could carry about 6 million tons of supplies, so 200 ships could transport a total of 1.2 billion tons of materials, which, in Chen Yu's calculation, was more than enough to support his subsequent actions. In addition to space carriers, warships, and heavy transport ships, there were also residential spacecraft. At this time, Chen Yu finally allocated computational power to build proper residential spacecraft that could generate artificial gravity through rotation. These residential spacecraft were cylindrical in shape, capable of continuously rotating at a fixed rate. Thus, due to centrifugal force, gravity effects were generated on the inner walls of the cylinders. Among them, the cylindrical living spacecraft prepared for the three-eyed beings measures 1 kilometer in length and 100 meters in diameter. Thus, its inner wall has an area of approximately 300,000 square meters. This area is not particularly large, and a portion must be deducted for equipment and common spaces. What remains is about 200,000 square meters. However, after constructing high-rise buildings, Chen Yu still plans to accommodate 100,000 three-eyed beings within one cylindrical spacecraft. It may be a bit cramped, but given the limited conditions, they will have to make do. Chen Yu has constructed 30 such living spacecraft for the three-eyed beings, capable of housing 3 million individuals. Although the total number of three-eyed beings currently exceeds 2 million, they cannot even fill these 30 cylindrical spacecraft because a significant portion needs to work on the mothership, heavy transport ships, and similar vessels, helping Chen Yu save computing power. As for the dwarf race, Chen Yu has built only one cylindrical spacecraft for the 20 individuals to reside in. These cylindrical spacecraft will not be attached to the mothership. They are self-powered and equipped with energy shield systems, allowing them to embark on interstellar voyages independently. Additionally, there are various other scientific research ships, engineering vessels, reconnaissance ships, and shuttle ships. There are 20 reconnaissance ships, 30 engineering ships, and 5 scientific research vessels. At this moment, a massive fleet consisting of nearly 170,000 various ships has taken shape, and the resource collection tasks are nearly complete. Only 1 year remains until the scheduled departure time. At this moment, the once bustling and lively city of the three-eyed beings, regarded as their home, has gradually become deserted. The relocation work has begun, with thousands of three-eyed beings moving into the living spacecraft each day. It is uncertain how many three-eyed beings shed tears upon leaving this city. This city holds countless memories for them. They did not experience the initial invasion by the 7th Fleet. Rather, they were born after the 7th Fleet integrated into human civilization. They grew up here, received education, worked, and started families. However, now, with the significant adjustments for the future of civilization, they must leave, pack their bags, and journey to distant lands. At this time, Chen Yu began to execute another task, to cleanse the entire solar system, erasing any traces of human civilization that once existed here. This is a crucial matter. After discussions with Mo Zhu, Ajuo, and others, Chen Yu has decided to disguise the solar system as having been invaded by a certain third-level civilization, leading to the complete disappearance of the Mozodi civilization's 7th Fleet. In this way, the existence of human civilization will be concealed. Even if an armed investigation team were to arrive, they would find nothing. At this moment, numerous warships are dispatched to every location where human civilization had reached. Warships have arrived at the dwarf planets beyond the Kuiper Belt, such as Haumea and Makemake, as well as the Jupiter system, the main base of human civilization, and the closer planets to the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, the asteroid belt, and other dwarf planets. At this moment, a fleet arrived at Mercury. On the desolate surface of Mercury, a steel jungle stood abruptly. Towering buildings, massive machinery, winding transportation tracks, and a huge base buried deep underground reminded Chunyu of the resources consumed during the construction of this steel jungle, filling his heart with emotion. Alas, it was hard to let go. Back then, this base had produced countless minerals, strongly supporting the development of civilization. Now, however, he had to destroy it all. With a command from Chunyu, this fleet, consisting of 300 warships and led by a flagship, revealed its menacing intent towards the steel jungle. In an instant, thousands of electromagnetic energy projectiles were launched, causing a massive and dazzling firelight to erupt within the steel jungle. The next moment, the city was shrouded in smoke. Chapter 135. Goodbye Jupiter. The towering buildings were easily twisted into shapes by the fierce artillery fire, and the winding tracks were directly overturned. The enormous factory, which Chunyu had high hopes for, was turned into ruins, and even a nearby mountain was flattened. After the complete destruction, Chunyu brought out the ultimate weapon, the hydrogen bomb. Even at the third-level civilization stage, the hydrogen bomb was the most powerful weapon. As long as it could be successfully delivered and detonated, the hydrogen bomb was the most powerful and useful weapon on the battlefield. Even the strongest defensive warships, the dwarf planet-class ships, would be vaporized in an instant by a hydrogen bomb. Unfortunately, this weapon could not be delivered quickly, and even if delivered, it could easily be destroyed before detonation, limiting its ability to shine on the battlefield. However, here, the hydrogen bomb played a role unmatched by other weapons. Under the hydrogen bomb, everything would be vaporized, nothing could withstand it. On the surface, it seemed that Chunyu was using the hydrogen bomb to erase traces, making the previous bombardment with electromagnetic energy cannons appear somewhat redundant. However, the truth was that this was necessary. It was a trap intentionally left by Chunyu. He had to leave evidence that the solar system had been invaded by a third-level civilization. Only in this way could the disappearance of the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization be directed toward being the result of an encounter with a third-level civilization, with the greatest suspicion being the Blue Moon civilization currently engaged in conflict with the Southern Star civilization. This was the significance of the prior bombardment with electromagnetic energy cannons. Hydrogen bombs could be made by both second and third-level civilizations, but electromagnetic energy cannons could only be manufactured by third-level civilizations. Thus, this maneuver not only erased the traces of human civilization, but also left evidence that a third-level civilization had passed through. Amid Chinyu's reflections, the Mercury base was completely annihilated. Afterwards, the fleet immediately headed to another base, applying the same method to extinguish it once more. Meanwhile, in various corners of the solar system and on different planets, similar situations were unfolding just like here. No matter the contributions made to human civilization in the past, whether it be mines, machinery factories, nuclear fusion power plants, or research centers, including the neutrino telescope base, all must be bombarded with electromagnetic energy first, and then completely eliminated with hydrogen bombs. Of course, Chunyu is not the type to destroy everything without consideration. Some precious instruments and equipment, such as large particle colliders, radio telescope arrays, and high-precision optical telescopes, which even with his engineering capabilities would require significant effort to recreate, will be relocated if possible. Those that are not valuable enough or difficult to move will have to be painfully destroyed. Under these circumstances, aside from the Jupiter system, all traces of human civilization that once existed in the solar system were systematically erased. After this, Chunyu checked multiple times to confirm that there would be no exposure before declaring the end. At this moment, the three-eyed people had completed their relocation and were all residing in the cylindrical spaceship. There were still about 5 months until the originally scheduled time, but there was no need to wait that long. At this moment, Chunyu also moved from the supercomputing base on Europa to the flagship of the entire fleet, the most powerful and maneuverable dwarf planet-class battleship, the Human Number. From this moment on, the central computer of the Human Number spaceship would become Chunyu's residence. This was a supercomputer built using the most advanced technology and processes developed by Chunyu. Although there had been no breakthroughs in computing technology, and the dual computer with quantum electronic communication had not yet been created, this supercomputer still achieved about a 36 increase in computing power compared to previous models. This computer is Chunyu's home, and the Human Number spaceship is his vehicle. Chunyu has decided that, at all times, ensuring the safety of the Human Number must be the top priority. In extreme situations, even sacrificing all other ships and all intelligent life forms to protect the Human Number spaceship would be worth it. Of course, there is no need to explicitly communicate this to the intelligent life forms, it is enough for everyone to understand it implicitly. His own relocation is the final critical node in the entire escape plan within the solar system. With this completed, only the last bit of finishing work remains, the cleanup of the Jupiter system. Looking at the massive Jupiter and its numerous moons, recalling the frantic escape from the inner solar system and the careful development after landing on Europa, Yu felt as if he were in a different era. The journey has been arduous and challenging, filled with countless difficulties. This place holds too many memories for him. At this moment, Europa still retains the buildings he constructed back then. Viewed through his current perspective, these buildings are certainly crude and outdated, yet he has preserved them until now. Now, he must personally destroy them. So, goodbye, Jupiter. Amidst the sorrowful cries of the three-eyed people, the traces of human civilization in the Jupiter system were completely erased. Including the city of San Yen, everything turned to dust. Thus, the day for setting sail arrived. Yu's voice reached the ears of every intelligent life form at that moment. I announced that human civilization is setting sail. Destination, the Wangliang Trinera system. Indeed, Yu's target was the Wangliang Trinera system, where the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization were engaged in a fierce battle. After countless discussions, simulations, and calculations, Yu discovered that only there lay the opportunity for human civilization to join the Star Alliance. At that moment, 30 space carriers, 200 heavy transport ships, 31 habitation spacecraft, along with 20 dwarf planet-class battleships capable of interstellar travel, and 165 assorted ships for reconnaissance, scientific research, and engineering, totaling 446 ships, simultaneously activated their ion thrusters. 446 brilliant, dazzling lights appeared at once. The massive fleet began to accelerate slowly, heading towards the inner solar system. Yes, they were not directly moving away from the sun, but rather drawing closer to it, as the Wangliang Trinera system was on the other side of the sun at that moment. The large fleet maintained coordination, ensuring a safe distance between each ship to avoid collisions and the influence of each other's exhaust trails. In a precise formation, they gradually distanced themselves from the Jupiter system, where Yu had lived for many years. Jupiter, farewell. At that moment, not only Yu, but countless San Yen people and dwarves also flashed this thought in their minds. Chapter 136. At the top of the sun sphere, Yu designed a relatively complex route for the fleet's journey out of the solar system. After leaving the Jupiter system, the human fleet would first visit Ceres. Ceres is a massive dwarf planet with a diameter of nearly 1,000 kilometers. Among dwarf planets, its size is not small. Due to its reserves of some rare minerals, Yu had previously built a base there, though it had since been cleared. Utilizing Ceres' gravity, the fleet would perform an acceleration maneuver using the gravity assist principle before heading to Mars. Even at a level 3 civilization, Yu did not forget to take advantage of planetary gravity during the fleet's acceleration process. After all, with such a large planet nearby, it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. Saving energy is crucial, especially since there would be no place to resupply once they left the solar system. The fleet passed by the unremarkable Ceres and soon arrived at Mars. The construction materials for the initial Martian base were still stored in the heavy transport ships, kept by Yu as a memento. Reflecting on the years spent living at the Martian base, Yu felt a wave of nostalgia. Of course, this did not stop him from taking full advantage of Mars' gravity to further increase the fleet's speed. The orbit around Earth was currently too chaotic, so it was best to avoid it for now. A collision would be troublesome. Yu bypassed Earth's orbit and headed straight for Mercury. As for Venus, it was temporarily set aside due to an unsuitable orbit. The fleet then took advantage of Mercury and soon encountered the largest prize in the solar system, the Sun. Being the largest, the Sun also offered the most resources to exploit, far surpassing the combined yields of all other planets. Currently, the Sun remains in a turbulent phase following impacts from debris. In fact, it would take millions of years for the Sun to settle down. Its intensity is that high. At this stage, the Sun's average radiation power exceeds around 6 times what it was before Earth's explosion. If Earth were still intact, this seemingly modest increase would lead to catastrophic conditions, rendering the planet a barren wasteland. Yu recalls the cautious and apprehensive moments when he flew past the Sun aboard the spacecraft. However, the situation is different now. Even if the Sun's radiation were to double, Yu would be unfazed. As the fleet glided past the massive fireball, observing the towering solar prominences and sunspots, experiencing the Sun's enormity and ferocity, the human fleet successfully maneuvered onward, continuing its voyage. Beyond this point, there would be no more resources to exploit. As the remaining planets were not in suitable positions, the fleet would have to accelerate steadily. At this moment, the entire fleet maintained an acceleration of 0.2 meters per square second, continuing until reaching 50 of the speed of light, which is approximately 150,000 kilometers per second. This means that the acceleration process would take about 24 years. After that, the human fleet would enter the inertial flight phase, relying on inertia to continue moving forward, only slowing down when approaching a point not far from Wangliangsan. Following the series of resource exploitation and continuous acceleration, the fleet's speed relative to the sun had reached 300 kilometers per second. After a month, the distance between the fleet and the sun had grown to 14.5 billion kilometers, with the fleet's speed reaching approximately 820 kilometers per second. From this distance, the sun had lost its disk-like appearance, degenerating into a mere point of light, albeit a remarkably bright one, even more brilliant than a full moon as seen from Earth, and almost blinding. Though this distance is vast, it still lies within the sun's influence. Whether in terms of magnetic fields, gravity, or energy, all aspects belong to the sun's domain. The human fleet continued its journey. About a month later, the fleet crossed the orbit of Neptune, the farthest major planet from the solar system. As for Pluto, it is no longer considered a major planet, but rather a dwarf planet. After another 50 days, the fleet arrived at a rather special location. At this moment, the fleet's speed was 200 kilometers per second, and the distance from the sun was approximately 12 billion kilometers. The fleet had reached the top of the heliosphere. In the galaxy, the void between stars is filled with interstellar medium. They are primarily composed of hydrogen and helium, and can exist in the form of ions, atoms, or molecules. The sun, through solar wind, has created a space unique to the solar system within the omnipresent interstellar medium. The interstellar medium cannot enter the solar system due to the sun's magnetic field and solar wind. The emergence of human civilization on Earth owes part of its existence to this phenomenon. It is precisely because the solar wind blocks high-energy particles from cosmic space that primitive life on Earth was able to develop and evolve safely billions of years ago. However, the power of the sun is also limited. Here, the high-energy charged particles originating from the sun, known as solar wind, after traveling over 10 billion kilometers and pushing the interstellar medium away by the same distance, have finally exhausted their energy. The solar wind has come to a halt here, creating a stalemate with the ubiquitous interstellar medium. This marks the heliopause. Crossing this threshold signifies the first step away from the solar system. From then on, the space Chinyu finds himself in will belong to the interstellar medium. Yet, there is still a long journey ahead to truly leave the solar system. The vastness of the solar system exceeds human imagination. At this moment, the sun, when viewed with the naked eye, is still a bright dot. But it is no longer as powerful as before. In fact, apart from being a bright spot, it has no essential difference from the other stars in the universe. Yet, this small bright dot governs everything in this space. Chunyu did not stop. He continued forward, stepping decisively into the realm of the interstellar medium. This is a place where human civilization has never set foot before. During the era of Earth, even the farthest deep space probes had not reached here. Of course, Chunyu's probe had been here, but it is his first time visiting in person. This place is vast, empty, and cold. Yet, even in such a location, there are macro-celestial bodies. These celestial bodies are collectively referred to as scattered disk objects. Chapter 137, Planetary Museum. The famous Haumea is one of the scattered disk objects. The territory of the entire solar system, if divided by the asteroid belt from the inside out, can roughly be categorized into several regions. First is the inner solar system, which includes the 4 terrestrial planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, as well as the asteroid belt. Beyond the asteroid belt lies the outer solar system, which contains the 4 gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. As the name suggests, terrestrial planets, like Earth, are primarily composed of rock and have only a thin layer of atmosphere. Gas giants, on the other hand, like Jupiter, are mainly composed of gas. The 4 inner solar system planets, along with the 4 outer solar system planets, though Earth has now been destroyed and is therefore no longer counted, constitute what is commonly referred to as the 8 major planets. The farthest gas giant is Neptune. Celestial bodies existing beyond Neptune are collectively referred to as trans-Neptunian objects. The area beyond Neptune is also divided into corresponding regions. First, there is the Kuiper belt, which is similar to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It is composed of numerous asteroids, the largest of which is Pluto, with a diameter of over 2,000 kilometers. The smaller ones are akin to interstellar dust. The Kuiper belt is the source of short-period comets. Historically, comets that could be observed from Earth, appearing every few decades or centuries, such as the famous Halley's Comet, originate from this region. Beyond the Kuiper belt lies the scattered disk. A portion of the scattered disk overlaps with the Kuiper belt but extends further out. At this moment, the human fleet is located within the scattered disk. Here, the observer noticed a large celestial body that appeared dark red. This is Haumea. Haumea is similar in size to Pluto but has a mass approximately 27 times greater. Its discovery directly led to Pluto being demoted from one of the 9 planets, categorizing it as a dwarf planet. The reasoning is straightforward. Haumea is larger than Pluto. If Pluto is classified as a planet, then Haumea should be classified as one too. However, if Haumea is also considered a planet, then a series of other celestial bodies with similar masses, such as Ceres and Eris, could also be classified as planets. This would result in a significant increase in the number of planets in the solar system. Consequently, the International Astronomical Union on Earth revised the definition of a planet, demoting Pluto and classifying bodies like Haumea as dwarf planets, thus reducing the number of planets to 8. This is why the observer set up a class of dwarf planet-level ships between comet level and satellite level within his fleet. The reason satellite level is above dwarf planet level is that many satellites have greater mass than dwarf planets and are closer to the larger planets. Haumea is a highly iconic celestial body. In the past, the observer's probes have also reached Haumea. However, during this pass, he gathered some telescope observation time to carefully appreciate this dwarf planet. The surface of this dwarf planet is covered with a significant amount of tholins, giving it its dark red color. The surface is not flat, featuring numerous peaks, basins, and valleys. The highest peak, named Haumea Peak by the observer, reaches an altitude of 120,000 meters, even higher than Mount Everest on Earth. It stands like a sword, majestically pointing towards the vast sky. The height of the highest peak on a celestial body depends on its mass, volume, and material. In simple terms, if a peak on a planet is too high, the pressure it exerts on its base will be too great, causing it to collapse under its own weight. Thus, it cannot be excessively high. Theoretically, the maximum height allowed for peaks on Earth is about 10,000 meters. Mount Everest has a height of 844 meters, which is generally in the same range. However, the dwarf planet mentioned is quite different. It is much smaller than Earth, with lower gravity, allowing for higher peaks to form. For instance, at this moment, the peak on that dwarf planet reaches a height of 120,000 meters. Theoretically, its maximum peak height could even reach around 30,000 meters. After enjoying the beautiful scenery on that dwarf planet, the human fleet continued its journey. After sailing for a while, another celestial body entered Chunyu's sight. This dwarf planet has a diameter of about 1,000 kilometers, making it a massive object as well. Its surface is similarly covered in a reddish hue. Here, they have already left the region of the scattered disk and ventured into a more outer space area, specifically the space between the scattered disk and the Oort cloud. Chunyu did not give this vast space a specific name. This region spans approximately from 20 billion kilometers away from the Sun, which is the outer side of the scattered disk, to about 70 billion kilometers away from the Sun, which is the inner side of the Oort cloud. Celestial bodies existing in this area are referred to as independent celestial bodies. They are considered independent because they are too far from the outermost giant planet, Neptune, to be significantly influenced by its gravity, let alone Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter within Neptune's orbit. Among these, the most representative celestial body is the one Chunyu is currently observing, which was once called Sedna by people on Earth. This is also a highly valuable celestial body. Because it is so distant, it is largely unaffected by other celestial bodies. As a result, it retains many traces from ancient times, much like rock strata on Earth. By analyzing these traces, Chunyu can learn about the history of the solar system, uncovering events that occurred hundreds of millions or even billions of years ago, and understanding the evolution of the Sun over the past few billion years. It serves as a kind of planetary museum, documenting the history of the solar system. This is highly beneficial for Chunyu's understanding of stellar and galactic evolution. For the past few hundred years, Chunyu has been dedicating some computational power to maintain research and exploration on Sedna. However, as he is about to leave the solar system, he must erase all traces of his presence on Sedna. Crossing Sedna's orbit, the human fleet continues to move forward. Chapter 138. The Oort cloud. Chunyu believes that there should be more than just one or a few celestial bodies similar to Sedna in this region. There should be many of them. However, this area is too distant, with sunlight being too weak and similar celestial bodies being too small. Even when he was in the Jupiter system, with technology at a level corresponding to a Type 3 civilization, searching for bodies like Sedna relied heavily on luck. Due to the numerous matters at hand, he had not dedicated much computational power to this aspect, which resulted in not finding any other celestial bodies beyond Sedna. At this moment, the fleet set out in full force, coincidentally passing through this region. Chunyu mobilized the observation team to carefully examine the space. After a thorough search, he actually discovered several other celestial bodies similar to Sedna. One of them was estimated to have a diameter of about 500 kilometers, with a similarly dark red surface. This indicated that its surface was also covered by a thick layer. However, due to the great distance, it was too late to dispatch unmanned probes, so Chunyu had to give up on it. The other celestial bodies had diameters also in the range of hundreds of kilometers, displaying dark red colors and a surface marked by numerous ravines, similar to Sedna. One of them was located only a few billion kilometers from the human fleet's trajectory. After some consideration, Chunyu decided to send a small scientific exploration ship to conduct an on-site investigation. Once the exploration ship left the human fleet, it immediately decelerated sharply and adjusted its course towards the dwarf planet. The human fleet continued its advance. At this moment, the speed of the human fleet had reached approximately 180,000 kilometers per second, and they were 800 billion kilometers away from the sun. From this point on, the human fleet truly entered the Oort cloud region. The Oort cloud is the most expansive area within the solar system. Its boundaries are not precisely defined. People from the Earth era had differing opinions on its farthest extent, with some estimating it to be about 0.36 light-years from the sun, others at 1 light-year, and some at 2 light-years. Now at the third civilization stage, Chunyu, after more detailed research, believed that the boundary of the Oort cloud extends to about 12 light-years. This means that from a distance of 800 billion kilometers from the sun, or about 1 light-month, to the range of 12 light-years, the span is a staggering 11 light-years, equivalent to approximately 10.56 trillion kilometers, all belonging to the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is the outermost layer of the entire solar system. Crossing the Oort cloud means truly leaving the solar system. In the past, Chunyu had not conducted detailed observations of the Oort cloud region. He had never even dispatched probes to reach there. It was not due to a lack of technical capability, but rather a lack of necessity. The Oort cloud was too empty to contain any detectable targets. According to Chunyu's estimates, the total mass of all material within the Oort cloud region was roughly equivalent to just 3 Earths. With a mass equivalent to only 3 Earths distributed across a volume of about 55 cubic light-years, the thinness of the material was evident. The human fleet pressed on. Simultaneously, all optical telescopes within the fleet began intensive observations, hoping to find even a single macroscopic celestial body. This search lasted a full year. Chunyu still did not find even one macroscopic body equivalent to the size of a soccer ball. The material was simply too sparse. At this moment, the scientific exploration ship previously sent to the Sedna-like celestial body finally arrived. On a cliff face in that location, the robot conducted a detailed exploration and transmitted the data back. The overall appearance of the cliff face was a dark red, with hints of other colors mixed in at the base. Chunyu carefully discerned and found some unusual elements, such as decay products of certain radioactive elements. Indeed, the early activity of the sun was incredibly violent, he thought. Looking at the traces left on the cliff, he seemed to see the sun in its formative early stages. At that time, the sun had just collapsed from the primordial nebula, nuclear fusion was ignited, and violent radiation swept across the entire solar system. The Earth had not yet formed and was just a small speck. The materials within the solar system were moving chaotically, constantly colliding, as matter accumulated and planets gradually grew. During that period, high-energy radiation from the sun directly bombarded the surface of this dwarf planet, forming some radioactive heavy elements. The unstable heavy elements slowly decayed, transforming into other elements, and were ultimately trapped beneath the surface of this dwarf planet, presenting themselves before Chunyu after billions of years. The weight of history and the length of time were palpable. After some exploration, the small research spacecraft finally took off, leaving the planet behind. In the vastness of space, Chunyu detonated the hydrogen bomb inside it. Accompanied by a dazzling flash of light, the small research spacecraft vaporized in an instant, turning into interstellar dust and completely disappearing. The human fleet continued to move forward, and during the ongoing search, Chunyu finally found the first macroscale object from the Oort cloud. It was a small asteroid, roughly 100 meters at its longest point, and had a fist-like shape. At that moment, it was located trillions of kilometers away from the sun. Yet, despite the vast distance, it still orbited the sun. It was estimated that it would take up to millions of years to complete one orbit around the sun. Meanwhile, its connection to the sun was exceedingly weak. Chunyu knew that if he casually hit it with an electromagnetic projectile, the kinetic energy imparted would be enough to propel it out of the solar system, never to return. In a broader sense, this area still belonged to the solar system, as the sun's gravity continued to dominate the motion of all celestial bodies in this region. However, this was not because the sun was particularly powerful, but rather because other stars were too distant, resulting in their gravitational influence being much weaker. The delineation of the Oort cloud followed this principle. If at a certain location, the gravitational influence of other stars on a celestial body exceeds that of the sun, then that location is the boundary of the Oort cloud and the boundary of the solar domain. For this asteroid, Chunyu still dispatched a research spacecraft for on-site study. However, given that his fleet was now traveling too fast, the research spacecraft could no longer catch up after deceleration. So, embracing its fate will also mean being completely vaporized by a hydrogen bomb, leaving no trace behind. Chapter 139. Interstellar material exchange, the next leg of the journey, was somewhat uneventful. Chen Yu had also moved past the initial excitement of embarking on interstellar travel for the first time. The universe is truly vast. He couldn't help but exclaim from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, the human fleet had been traveling for a full 9 years. The speed of the human fleet had increased to approximately 560,000 kilometers per second, about 187 times the speed of light. At this point, the human fleet was approximately 7 trillion kilometers from the sun, about 0.073 light years. Since encountering that 100-meter-sized asteroid, Chen Yu had not been able to find any macro-celestial bodies in the Oort cloud region, even with the observational technology of a level 3 civilization. The space here was simply too empty, too vast. A speed of 560,000 kilometers per second undoubtedly belonged to an extremely high velocity. However, despite such speed, in the absence of reference points, the human fleet still appeared to be stationary in the eyes of Chen Yu and other intelligent beings. The starry sky seen from here was not much different from that seen within the solar system. Even the sun showed no remarkable changes. At this distance, the sun remained the brightest star in the sky. Its brightness had been gradually decreasing, but the decline was not significant. If it weren't for the slight gravitational pull caused by acceleration, reminding them that the fleet was still speeding up, Chen Yu might have really doubted whether he had moved at all during these years. The environment here, compared to when they were only several billion kilometers from the sun, felt remarkably similar, at least 99.9999 alike, to the intelligent beings without the aid of instruments. After such a long journey, traveling so far felt almost like a solitary voyage. This could truly be considered genuine interstellar space. Aside from gravity, the sun's influence here was nearly negligible. In this situation, some special experimental requests could be conducted. Chen Yu thought about this and made some arrangements. The scientists of the three-eyed beings became busy again. During this time, the three-eyed beings had not been idle either. Due to limited resources, large-scale scientific experiments could not be conducted, but theoretical research was unaffected. Thus, the scientists remained busy throughout the day. The Society of the Three-Eyed Beings continued to operate normally. Now, the tasks assigned by Chen Yu only made their already busy schedule even busier. As for Chen Yu himself, he certainly had not been idle. In fact, without the previous construction tasks, he found himself even busier. His massive computational power was continually engaged in calculations and research on physical theories and certain mathematical models, yielding many results. In addition, Chen Yu had accumulated thousands of experimental requirements, and once the supply conditions improved, he would immediately conduct the corresponding experiments to promote technological development. In the past, they didn't even know where the problems lay. Now, regardless of whether the problem has been solved or not, it is finally raised, and subsequent research on these issues can proceed. This cannot be considered a waste of time. It is equally meaningful. Time slowly flows by in such circumstances. In the blink of an eye, 2 years have passed. On this day, the speed of the human fleet reached 680,000 kilometers per second, which is 267 times the speed of light. The distance between the human fleet and the sun also reached 109 trillion kilometers, approximately 114 light years. Here, Chen Yu once again observed a macro-celestial body. It was also quite small, only about 50 meters in length, unremarkable, and there was no need for further observation. However, its orbit was peculiar. After precise measurements, Chen Yu discovered that this asteroid was not currently orbiting the sun. It was escaping from the sun in the direction of a 3-star system at a speed of about 160 meters per second. This 3-star system, known as the Southern Gate 2, includes the well-known Proxima Centauri, the closest star to the sun. The direction of this asteroid's movement was towards Proxima Centauri. Chen Yu looked at this asteroid with interest, and a term suddenly came to mind: gravitational disturbance. The celestial bodies in this region have very unstable orbits. They may orbit the sun for a period of time, but can easily lose their current trajectory due to an impact or the gravitational influence of a distant star, thus changing their motion state. They may either approach the sun, entering the inner solar system, or move away from the sun, escaping the solar system to become part of other star systems. Currently, if not affected by other influences, this asteroid will likely be captured by the gravitational pull of the Southern Gate 2 system in about 10 million years. The wonders of cosmic creation are truly remarkable. Perhaps material exchange between different star systems can occur through such mechanisms. Through elemental analysis, Chen Yu confirmed that this asteroid was born in the solar system. And the reason it ended up so far from the sun is likely due to the gravitational influence of Jupiter and Saturn. At the beginning of the solar system's formation, internal material was chaotic, collisions were frequent, and the large planets were still developing, lacking stable orbits, with mutual gravitational influences creating a tangled mess. In such a situation, there could be some asteroids that, through mechanisms similar to gravitational slingshots, gain high speeds to escape the inner solar system and reach the Oort cloud region. It is highly probable that it will eventually become part of the Southern Gate 2 system, since such a mechanism exists. Is it possible that asteroids born in the Southern Gate 2 system could also be expelled to the Oort cloud of that system due to internal gravitational conflicts, and then, influenced by the sun's gravitational disturbances, escape the Southern Gate 2 system and finally reach the solar system? Could they even eventually collide with the primordial Earth billions of years ago? This is also a possibility. So, could the formation of life on Earth be related to such materials from other star systems? Xinyu could not verify this. However, at least he could not deny this possibility. One thing he was certain of was that, even though the Oort cloud was so far from the Sun and the Earth, and even though the other stars were equally distant from the Sun, they still had a significant impact on the evolution of life on Earth. Xinyu even suspected that the extinction of the dinosaurs, which dominated the Earth 70 million years ago, was related to the Oort cloud and another star that had passed close to the solar system during that era. It seemed incredible that a star, located tens of trillions of kilometers away, could be linked to the extinction of the dinosaurs, but there was a certain logic behind it. Chapter 140. Goodbye. Son, it is well known that the dinosaurs went extinct about 70 million years ago, and the highly suspected cause was the impact of a small asteroid approximately 10 kilometers in diameter. This asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, forming the famous Chicxulub crater. It is speculated that the impact caused a large amount of dust to enter the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for up to a year. A significant amount of sulfuric acid also entered the stratosphere in aerosol form, reducing the solar energy reaching the surface by about 20, leading to the massive death of plants and marine plankton. Consequently, the organisms at the top of the food chain also went extinct, marking the end of the age of dinosaurs. Scientists highly suspect that this asteroid originated from the asteroid belt, but there are some theories suggesting that it came from the Oort cloud. According to scientists' estimates, at that time, there was a star in the vast galaxy that happened to pass very close to the Sun, with the distance between them possibly reaching as close as 2 light years. 1 light year, or even less than 1 light year. This distance falls within the range of the Oort cloud. Due to the influence of this star, the orbits of numerous comets and asteroids within the Oort cloud were affected, causing them to begin moving towards the inner solar system. The influx of asteroids and comets led to impacts on every celestial body in the inner solar system, with Earth being just one of them. The other celestial bodies were lifeless, so their impacts were inconsequential. However, Earth had a vast world of dinosaurs. This impact led to their complete extinction. This is the logical chain linking the Oort cloud and distant passing stars to the mass extinction of dinosaurs on Earth. In addition, the passing star may have played a significant role in the formation of Earth's oceans. A large portion of the water on Earth comes from impacts by icy comets. When icy comets struck Earth, the ice melted into water, accumulating to form oceans. But where do these icy comets come from? Research suggests that scientists, along with Xinyu, believe these icy comets likely originated from the Oort cloud, or at least a significant portion of them did. Since they came from the Oort cloud, they are very likely connected to the passing star. It is highly probable that due to their influence, these icy comets lost their stable orbits and ultimately collided with Earth. Xinyu reminisced about his past on Earth, feeling a surge of emotion. Perhaps the bottle of mineral water he casually bought from a roadside shop then traced its origins back billions of years, possibly coming from an icy comet in the Oort cloud at the edge of the solar system. This is quite a plausible notion, not mere fantasy. With a heart full of emotion, Xinyu watched as the asteroid left the solar system. He knew that from this moment on, he had truly departed the solar system, as the sun's gravitational influence was no longer dominant in this region. The gravitational pull of other stars in the galaxy had overshadowed that of the sun. Xinyu adjusted his telescope to gaze once more at the bright star in the distance. Even at such a vast distance, the sun remained the brightest star in the sky. Goodbye, sun. I am setting sail for other star systems, and in the future, I may venture even farther. In those places, I hope to see more magnificent sights, encounter even more wondrous phenomena, and come across a greater variety of celestial bodies and larger stars. But I will always remember, the solar system is my homeland. It is you that nurtured human civilization, and me as well. Goodbye, sun. The human fleet continued to accelerate, moving forward relentlessly. What Xinyu did not know was that at that moment, in another direction of the solar system, a massive aerospace mothership was gliding at a speed of 10 times the speed of light, having undergone a long deceleration to reach a point approximately 12 light-years from the sun. Captain Yun Guang of the aerospace mothership, in the main control room, sent a broadcast to the solar system in the form of electromagnetic waves. Commander Mo Zhu of the 7th Fleet of the Mozodi civilization, please follow the instructions to transport the corresponding supplies to the coordinates provided. After sending the command, Yun Guang looked at another soldier-like figure, a Nanqing person, in the control room. Go, investigate the disappearance of Aodwa carefully. He emphasized the word carefully. The soldier understood the gravity of the task, immediately standing at attention and replying seriously, "Yes, I will conduct a thorough investigation." Yun Guang knew that from this moment, the Seventh Fleet of the Mozodi civilization had effectively pronounced a death sentence. No matter the reason behind it was death, he was still the deputy captain of the Yun Guang mothership. Ultimately, he had perished under the control of the Seventh Fleet. Therefore, the Seventh Fleet must bear the responsibility. The Seventh Fleet must be completely eliminated. This was a matter of dignity for a level 3 civilization, not to be challenged. Thinking of Emoju, Yun Guang felt a slight regret. You had over 100 years to maneuver, yet you did nothing and ended up in this situation. Perhaps you did try, but your civilization's leader was unwilling to pay a heavy price and decided to abandon you? Yun Guang shook his head slightly, halting that line of thought. If you must die, so be it. Just don't delay the supply transport. At this moment, the soldier, also the leader of the armed investigation team, had gathered the fleet and departed from the aerospace mothership, setting course for the solar system. 50 warships of the 3rd civilization level were more than enough to deal with the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization. After several years of deceleration, the armed investigation team finally arrived at the solar system. However, to the surprise of the team leader, the solar system was completely empty at that moment. Could it be? Did that guy, Mo Zhua, flee in fear of punishment? As a second-level civilization, where could he escape to? Report. A slightly panicked soldier burst in. The observation team has discovered a large amount of ruins on many planets within the solar system. Preliminary observations suggest that the destruction pattern involved a heavy bombardment from energy weapons, followed by complete annihilation with a hydrogen bomb. What? Energy weapons? The team leader's expression changed. Weapons of a 3rd-level civilization? How is that possible? Could it be that the Blue Moon civilization has discovered our supply point? The Blue Moon civilization was the only one with both the motive and capability to invade the solar system. After thinking for a moment, the leader made a decision. The investigation team will halt and not advance further to avoid ambush by the Blue Moon civilization. Send a scout ship to verify the situation. And if the reports are confirmed, we will withdraw immediately. Yes. As for Mo Zhua, the leader no longer cared. Chapter 141. Cosmic Microwave Background Radiation with further detailed investigations. More traces of 3rd-level civilization weapons emerged before the investigation team members. Energy weapons, indeed, were energy weapons. Without mastering the quantum field equations and that advanced mathematical tool, it would be impossible to control the technology that keeps electromagnetic projectiles in an excited state, transforming them from simple electromagnetic guns into electromagnetic energy weapons. This was knowledge only a true 3rd-level civilization could possess. At this moment, the investigation team members had no doubts left. Retreat, immediately withdraw from the star system. The leader, who had remained on the edge of the solar system without entering its interior, issued the command. At this moment, this ordinary stellar system seemed as dangerous as a den of wolves and tigers in his eyes. He quickly contacted the captain of the Yun Guang, the aerospace carrier, to report the situation. What? The 7th fleet is completely gone. Yun Guang's expression fluctuated. He never expected things to develop this way. However, since it had come to this, he could only report it. As an established 3rd-level civilization, the communication range of the Southern Star civilization could reach 1 trillion kilometers, approximately 0.1 light-years. At that moment, the Yunguang aerospace carrier was tens of light-years away from the Wanliang star system and its home system. But it was fine. In this star region, the Southern Star civilization had set up numerous communication centers in advance to serve as signal relays. The Yunguang aerospace carrier could still conveniently communicate with the home system or the frontline command of the Wanliang star system. After reporting the matter and receiving orders from higher-ups to divert to another star system to receive and transport another batch of supplies, the Yunguang aerospace carrier began to accelerate again. The matter concerning the solar system came to a close. After all, the suspects were already dead. What more was there to investigate? At this moment, approximately 13 light-years away from the sun, under the illumination and surrounding of countless stars in the vast universe, the large human fleet is still accelerating. Chun Yu noticed that the originally pitch-black universe, dotted only with a few starlights, began to exhibit a peculiar change as the fleet's speed increased. In front of the fleet, the dark and deep universe gradually revealed a hint of red. Some stars that were originally red transformed into blue. Additionally, some blue stars became invisible to the naked eye. There were no significant changes behind the fleet. However, some stars that previously appeared red had now vanished from sight, while some that were originally blue had turned red. One blue, one red. Dotting the myriad stars of similar hues, made the vast universe appear colorful at this moment. At this time, the human fleet seemed not to be sailing through space, but rather navigating in a fairy tale world. How beautiful! Chin Yu silently marveled. He did not feel panic due to these changes, as he understood that these were merely natural phenomena. fully explainable by established scientific theories. In fact, as early as the era of Earth, people had predicted this phenomenon. Xinyu was simply witnessing it firsthand now. He knew that the light was, in fact, the color of the universe. Its formal name is cosmic microwave background radiation. It is the oldest light in the universe. Current theories suggest that the universe originated from a Big Bang. Our universe is constantly expanding. From a cosmic perspective, the distance between any 2 points is increasing over time, and the farther apart the 2 points are, the faster their distance increases. This is the theory of cosmic expansion, which has been confirmed by real-world observations. People even believe that in regions extremely distant from Earth, celestial bodies may be moving away from Earth at speeds that could exceed the speed of light. To understand the expansion of the universe, a simple analogy can be made. Imagine the universe as a small balloon. If you randomly place 2 points on this balloon and then inflate it, you will see that the 2 points, which were initially close together, will move farther apart as the balloon expands. Furthermore, the greater the initial distance between the 2 points, the faster they will move away from each other as the balloon inflates. This is how the expansion of the universe works. As for why this occurs, Xinyu does not yet know. However, he speculates that the universe may also be a sphere in 4-dimensional space, which is why it behaves this way. The balloon is a 3-dimensional sphere, while the universe is a 4-dimensional sphere. After understanding the expansion of the universe, one can use general relativity to reverse the time of the universe's expansion. Since the universe expands a little more every second, it should shrink a little for every second we look back. Continuing to trace back, there will eventually come a time when the universe should be infinitely small, in a state of almost infinite density and temperature. This point is referred to by Xinyu as the singularity, accompanied by certain physical processes that are still beyond understanding. This singularity suddenly began to expand at an extremely high speed, resembling an explosion. This marks the origin of the term Big Bang in the theory. With the explosion of the singularity, all matter in the universe was ejected from this infinitely small point. Consequently, countless stars were formed, stars began to ignite. Many stars started to gather into galaxies, and planets began to orbit around stars. The cosmic microwave background radiation originated from this Big Bang event. In fact, the cosmic microwave background radiation itself is the most direct evidence of the existence of the Big Bang. It is the light released by the universe during that explosion. Appearing before any star was ignited by nuclear fusion, it had already permeated the entire universe long before the first star emerged. When the human fleet traveled at a relatively low speed, the cosmic microwave background radiation was undetectable, visible only through precise instruments, as it is not visible light. However, as the fleet's speed increased, the situation changed subtly. The rapid speed caused the wavelength of the microwave radiation in front of the ship to shorten, increasing its frequency and energy, transforming microwaves into visible light that could be seen with the naked eye. Similarly, as the fleet accelerated, those stars that were previously visible behind the fleet began to shift from visible light to infrared as their light frequency decreased and wavelength increased, becoming invisible to the eye. Among the frequencies of visible light, red is the lowest and violet is the highest. Thus, as the fleet continued to accelerate, the color of the cosmic microwave background radiation in front gradually changed. At this moment, the protagonist felt as if his fleet was sailing through a rainbow. It is well known that a rainbow consists of 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The colors of the universe before him went through a similar transformation, starting with red, then slowly turning to orange, followed by yellow, and finally blue. The universe presented to him was a vast blue expanse, akin to a great ocean. The small human fleet set sail in this ocean. The protagonist knew that if the fleet's speed increased further, the color of the cosmic microwave background radiation would shift to violet. If the speed continued to rise, violet would disappear, and the universe would turn completely dark, rendering everything invisible. This is because the light ahead, due to the fleet's excessive speed, would have exited the visible spectrum and transformed into ultraviolet light. If the speed increased even more, it would turn into X-rays, and eventually into gamma rays. Gamma rays are the highest energy form of light. If the fleet's speed kept increasing, the energy of the gamma rays would grow stronger and stronger, to a point where no protective measures could withstand it, leading to the inevitable destruction of the ship and loss of life. However, the protagonist was not concerned about this issue. According to his calculations, such a situation would only occur if the ship's speed exceeded 9,999 times the speed of light. At this moment, he simply did not possess that capability. He even believed that not even a level 4 civilization would have such an ability. A level 4 civilization is highly likely to have mastered technology for faster-than-light travel, but that would be through alternative means to circumvent the speed of light limitation, rather than genuinely accelerating to superluminal speeds in space. At this moment, The human fleet had reached its planned cruising speed, achieving 55 of the speed of light, which is approximately 165 million kilometers per second. At this instant, the spacecraft's engines, which had been continuously operating and expelling high-speed plasma for a full 26 years, finally shut down. The acceleration that had persisted for 26 years, creating an artificial gravity equivalent to about 1/50th of Earth's gravity, vanished in an instant as the acceleration ceased. Over the course of 26 years, to reach this speed, the human fleet had traveled a total distance of 7 light-years. The distance from the Wangliang triple star system to the solar system is only 195 light-years. At this moment, they had already traveled 7 light-years just for acceleration. Subsequently, when they reached the Wangliang triple star system, the deceleration will take the same amount of time and cover the same distance. In total, the distance required for the human fleet to cruise at 55 of the speed of light would only be 55 light-years, which would take 10 years. After accelerating for 26 years, cruising for 10 years, and decelerating for another 26 years, the total time for the human fleet to travel the 195 light-years would be 62 years. There was no way around it. Interstellar travel was this complicated. It was too vast and too empty. The distances between stars are exceedingly great. After ceasing acceleration and entering inertial cruising mode, Chen immediately manipulated numerous robots to conduct comprehensive inspections of each engine. This was Chen Yu's first time undertaking such a long-distance journey. The engines he had manufactured were also operating continuously for the first time over such an extended period. Even after extensive simulations, Chen Yu still felt some anxiety when faced with the actual voyage. The final inspection results filled Chen Yu with sighs. He saw that after 26 years of continuous operation, about 80 of the engines had developed serious malfunctions. Approximately 30 engines were completely beyond repair, not even worth the cost of major repairs. While they had managed to maintain operation under stable conditions before, they could no longer restart once they stopped. The material technology was still somewhat inadequate. The manufacturing precision was insufficient and were exceeded expectations. In the environment of strong radiation and high temperatures, the engine materials had undergone brittle deformation, making them impossible to repair. The continuous operation for 26 years had exposed all the problems that were previously hidden beneath the surface and could not be detected by Chen Yu. Fortunately, he had prepared in advance, stockpiling relevant spare parts, and even had a foundry. He decided to take advantage of these 10 years to produce a batch of new engines. In addition to the crucial engines, various large vessels such as heavy transport ships, aerospace carriers, and dwarf planet-class battle spacecraft also revealed some issues due to the prolonged journey. Chen Yu did not let it go either. Instead, he consolidated all the issues, compiled a detailed list, and immediately began tackling the over 100,000 problems on that list, attempting to resolve them, either by fixing or applying them to the manufacture of new engines. This valuable decade was destined to be spent in busyness for Chen Yu. Beyond his busy schedule, he also took advantage of the unique environment at the moment to conduct some related experiments. Such a high-speed flight environment is rare. Aside from interstellar travel at this moment, it cannot be replicated under normal circumstances. Even if one attempted to forcibly replicate it, it would be exceedingly troublesome. One of the experiments involved studying the effects of cosmic rays on spacecraft materials under high-speed flight conditions. At this moment, all 446 large spacecraft had activated their energy shields for protection. Numerous warships and small ferry ships were also under the protection of the energy shield of the mothership. Chen Yu maneuvered a small ferry ship, allowing it to exit the protective range of the mothership's energy shield and directly exposed it to the space environment. Then he left it unattended. At this moment, the fleet was in an inertial flight state. Although this small ferry ship had no power, it could still follow alongside the fleet without drifting away. It relied on inertia to travel along with the fleet for a full year. After a year, when Chen Yu planned to maneuver it again, he discovered that the ship had lost responsiveness to his commands. It seemed that all its internal communication devices had malfunctioned or been destroyed. Chen Yu had no choice but to dispatch another ship to salvage it. The salvage ship was equipped with several mechanical arms that could directly grasp the ferry ship and tow it back to the dock for inspection. However, what Chen Yu did not expect was that as soon as the mechanical arm clamped onto a protrusion of the ferry ship and was about to secure it, the metal protrusion was crushed immediately. Chen Yu then maneuvered the salvage ship to deploy a large net, intending to pull the ferry ship directly. But when the net was pulled tight, the ferry ship collapsed entirely, shattering into millions of pieces, never to regain its original shape. Chapter 143. Deceleration. Even though Chen Yu had mentally prepared himself, the changes at this moment still surprised him. Before he attempted to salvage it, the ship had maintained its original appearance. But now, this ship, constructed with Tier 3 civilization technology and advanced materials, was like a sandcastle, easily shattered by a gentle breeze. The large debris was gone, and Chen Yu could only salvage some small fragments. which he brought back to the laboratory for observation using various instruments. Upon examination, Chen Yu immediately discovered that the originally structurally sound ship, primarily made of a special iron-nickel-titanium alloy, had inexplicably mixed with a large amount of impurities, becoming loose, porous, and exceedingly fragile. Not to mention being struck by an electromagnetic projectile, even a dwarf like Otto could easily break it apart. It seems that I had previously underestimated the impact of cosmic rays on metal materials during high-speed travel. Chen Yu thought to himself. Fortunately, there is an energy shield. Otherwise, after traveling at 55 times the speed of light for so long, all my spacecraft would be rendered useless. Chen Yu had already identified the cause of the ferry spacecraft's condition and confirmed the culprit behind it: interstellar medium. In the interstellar space, far from stars, matter is extremely sparse. At low speeds, it basically has no effect on macroscopic objects. However, if the speed is high enough, like the human fleet reaching 55 times the speed of light at this moment, the situation changes. At this speed, the originally unremarkable and harmless interstellar medium can become ferocious. Free neutrons, alpha particles, beta particles, molecular clouds, tiny interstellar dust, and so on. Just like a small bird hitting an airplane can destroy its engine. These tiny particles colliding with a spacecraft traveling at high speed can trigger extremely violent reactions, even nuclear reactions. The chemical bonds of the molecules and atoms that make up the spacecraft's outer shell can be directly broken. Protons and neutrons in the atomic nucleus can also be knocked out, leading to nuclear fission or adding a few more protons and neutrons, resulting in nuclear fusion, transforming one element into another. This explains the mysterious impurities found in the spacecraft's shell. The fission or fusion of metal elements alters the type of elements and changes the properties of the material. The extremely high energy impacts cause the material to lose its original properties. The mixture of various impurities makes the material loose and porous, and it can easily break with a slight force. If sublight speed travel had been forcibly conducted before the development of energy shield technology, this ferry spacecraft would have met the same fate as those aircraft. However, with the energy shield, things are different. Apart from electromagnetic waves, most of the other radiation and particles can be deflected by the energy shield, preventing them from impacting the spacecraft and thus preserving the performance of the shell material. After this experiment, Chen Yu felt that his knowledge in applied physics, engineering, and material science had increased. He gained further insights into the future direction of technology development. After this, Chen Yu began conducting more experiments of various types. He started to throw many different materials outside the energy shield, allowing high-energy cosmic rays and interstellar medium to bombard them. After a period of time, he would retrieve and observe their changes to determine which materials exhibited superior performance. This was not only a journey of interstellar travel, but also a scientific research journey, an experimental journey. Chen Yu never misses any opportunity to enhance his technological level. As time slowly passed, several years went by in the blink of an eye. During this time, the latest model of high-speed ion engine was finally developed successfully. Chen Yu immediately started the production line to manufacture it. The newly improved high-speed ion engines have undergone numerous adjustments, particularly focusing on enhancing their resistance to high temperatures and radiation. Out of over 100,000 issues identified, Chen Yu managed to resolve approximately 80,000 through structural adjustments and optimization. As for the remaining 20,000 or so problems, they cannot be addressed for now. The reasons for this inability include the limitations of current technology and resource constraints that prevent large-scale research. However, Chen Yu has made efforts to circumvent these issues through structural design. The latest model of the engine is still far from being mature, stable, and reliable. It is certainly inferior to those from a certain civilization that can operate stably for thousands of years. Yet, it is a significant improvement over previous engines that would fail after only about 20 years of operation, making it somewhat acceptable for use. Future enhancements can be researched slowly once the environment stabilizes. At this moment, there are still 2 years left until the scheduled deceleration time. This means that within these 2 years, the complete replacement and installation of all engines must be accomplished. Thus, against the backdrop of a brilliant universe, one side blue and the other black, the human fleet, seemingly suspended in time, became busy once again. Numerous ferry spacecraft were constantly shuttling between the mothership and heavy transport ships, delivering engines to their installation positions. Hundreds of thousands of robots, along with thousands of engineers, worked diligently to install these newly constructed engines. Once everything was completed, the scheduled deceleration time arrived. At this moment, after maintaining an inertial flight state for a full 10 years and having traveled a distance of 55 light-years, the human fleet was finally set for a major operation. Under Chen Yu's command, over 400 large ships simultaneously activated their attitude adjustment engines, turning away from the target star system. Initiate deceleration. Chen Yu issued the command. In the next moment, Nearly 10 million newly replaced, overhauled, or maintained high-speed ion engines simultaneously emitted their glow. The gravity, equivalent to 1/50th of that on Earth, reappeared in every ship after a decade-long absence. Ahead, the human civilization faced a distant journey of nearly 7 light-years, spanning a lengthy 26 years. However, during the deceleration process, the exhaust direction of the human fleet was not directly facing the target star system. Instead, there was a slight deviation. This small angular deviation would, after expanding over nearly 7 light-years, lead the human fleet to ultimately arrive at a different stellar system, rather than the intended one. The name of that system is called Virae 03505658. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, several years had passed. Chapter 144. War and Peace in the Frontline Command Center of a Certain Civilization. Commander Liu Went faced the battle reports displayed on the screen, his brow furrowed. The command center was housed within a massive ring-shaped spaceship, with a diameter of 2 kilometers and a wall thickness of 200 meters. The vessel was equipped with numerous weapons, including laser cannons, electromagnetic energy guns, missile launchers, and more. A faint energy shield completely enveloped the ship, leaving no gaps. Any object that failed to gain permission, whether it was interstellar dust, an electromagnetic projectile, or another spacecraft, would be immediately deflected from its course by the powerful energy shield as soon as it approached. Even those that could not be deflected would be unable to maintain a stable form under the intense energy infusion, turning into clusters of plasma gas. The massive size, countless advanced weapons, and formidable energy shield exuded a chilling and deadly aura that could be felt by intelligent beings at just a glance. This was a flagship vessel, the South Star III, specifically built for destruction and devastation, integrating all the advanced technologies of the long-established third-tier civilization. There were only a few such flagship vessels within the entire South Star civilization. Numerous smaller ships darted around this enormous flagship, with countless elite soldiers from the South Star civilization executing various missions aboard. In the distance, the warships were indistinct, merely appearing as numerous bright points scattered throughout space, their numbers seemingly infinite, overshadowing the myriad stars in the universe. The Wangliang III War was the only war the South Star civilization had engaged in for hundreds of years, and its outcome was tied to the fate of the civilization to some extent. Consequently, the South Star civilization dispatched nearly half of its military strength to this location, along with Marshal Liu Went, who had achieved great merit in numerous interstellar conflicts, to serve as the frontline commander. At this moment, the vast fleet, representing half of the South Star civilization's military strength, was stationed in the orbit of a rocky planet with a diameter of approximately 150,000 kilometers. However, despite commanding such a large and powerful fleet, Marshal Liu Went's expression was still grave. The war had dragged on for hundreds of years. During this time, the South Star civilization had exhausted all means to counter the enemy, but frankly speaking, it had not gained significant advantages in this conflict. The reason was clear. The South Star civilization valued the Wangliang III system in this war, and its opponent, the Blue Moon civilization, equally valued the star system and the conflict. Liu Wen understood that this prolonged war was nearing its end. Recently, the speaker of the South Star civilization had personally communicated with the supreme leader of the Blue Moon civilization. Although the conversation did not delve deeply into the war, it was a clear signal for peace talks. Both civilizations, evenly matched, had realized that neither side could annihilate the other's military strength to dominate the star system and its resources. Peace talks and joint development were the only choices aligned with both parties' interests. Logically, with both sides heading towards negotiations, military pressure should be correspondingly alleviated. However, Marshal Liu Went was well aware that the reality was quite the opposite. The more both sides sought peace talks, the more they were compelled to fight. Otherwise, if concessions were made on the battlefield and weakness was displayed, their position at the negotiation table would be disadvantaged, leading to significant losses in future benefit distribution. Therefore, they must fight, and they must rally their strength for a major offensive. They did not aspire to annihilate the opponent, but at least they needed to gain the upper hand and demonstrate their strength. At that time, they could secure more benefits at the negotiation table. Marshal Liu Wen also understood that the opposing commander likely held the same thoughts. This indicated that the upcoming battle would be unprecedentedly fierce, with a brutality surpassing any battle fought between the two sides over the past centuries. How ironic it was that this battle, on the eve of peace talks, would turn out to be the most intense and brutal one in hundreds of years. There could be no retreat for either side. Given this, they would have to fight and see who had the real strength. Liu Went made up his mind. Report to the Marshal. The 6th Fleet has been ordered to maneuver to asteroid 13,521, with supplies sufficient to support 3 months of high-intensity combat. Currently, the 6th Fleet is establishing defenses based on that asteroid. The military factories and the global energy shield are under urgent construction. Inform the fleet commander that it must be completed within a month. Yes, report to the marshal. The Yunguang aerospace carrier has sent a message stating that the solar system has been attacked by the Blue Moon civilization, and the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization has been completely annihilated, with all supplies lost. The Yunguang aerospace carrier will change its course to the Tianyuan 4-star system to receive supplies there before heading to our location. As a result, the arrival time of the Yunguang aerospace carrier will be delayed by about 20 years. A flash of anger crossed Lu Wen's face as he snorted coldly. What do you mean by an attack from the Blue Moon civilization? I heard that the deputy captain of the Yunguang, Aodhwa, went missing in the solar system. Could it be that Aodhwa's excessive exploitation forced the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization to take desperate measures and flee after committing murder? The subordinates fell silent, not daring to speak. These people were always causing trouble. Such significant matters were being ruined by them. What would happen if the supplies were delayed for 20 years? When the war was over, I would have to demand an explanation from them. The subordinates grew increasingly silent, not daring to make a sound. Lu Wen waved his hand, and the subordinate felt as if they had received a pardon and quickly left. Moments later, another staff officer entered. Report to the marshal. Frontline reconnaissance has detected that the Blue Moon civilization's Deep Blue Fleet is maneuvering towards asteroid 5281. Lu Wen's expression became even more serious. Asteroid 5281. Could it be that the true objective of the Blue Moon civilization is to firmly hold the No. 7 shipping lane and block our fleet from encircling the Deep Red Fleet? Have they already sensed our intentions? One report after another continued to converge towards Marshal Lu Wen. Along with these reports, a clear dynamic battlefield image formed in his mind. Both commanders were constantly deploying troops, and the glow of warships flying through the star system was visible everywhere, with even some small-scale battles already beginning to occur. A storm is brewing, and a great battle is about to begin. Chapter 145, Fierce Struggle. In the vast sky, 2 suns from the Wangliang star system quietly hang in the universe, releasing astonishing heat. Countless stars are scattered around, making the entire sky extraordinarily magnificent. However, no one can clearly distinguish whether those stars are real or merely the light emitted by the propulsion systems of spacecraft. The universe is silent, and it has always been silent. The immense scale can overshadow the activities of all intelligent life. Even though 2 major civilizations are engaged in a desperate, all-out battle, the universe remains quiet. Amid this silence, the most intense and brutal battle in history between the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization has begun. Far away, trillions of kilometers away, Chunyu's long-range detection equipment is aimed at this location, working tirelessly to collect information about this battle. Despite the distance being significantly shortened compared to before, on a macro level, Chunyu still cannot find any signs of war occurring there. Only some fleeting flashes, certain high-energy and highly directional radiations, and some high-energy particles can hint at the intensity and brutality of the war. Chunyu certainly does not wish for the war between the 2 major civilizations in the Wangliang star system to end, because only through war and chaos can his subsequent plans be executed, providing him with an opportunity. However, upon sensing that the conflict in the Wangliang star system has intensified again, seemingly indicating that the war is still ongoing and will not end in the short term, Chunyu's heart grows heavy once more. This is because Chunyu has made a prediction through modeling, leading to a judgment. This judgment is that this is very likely a battle initiated by both sides to gain the upper hand before a final negotiation. Otherwise, after hundreds of years of warfare, why would it suddenly become so intense at this moment? The fiercer the fighting now, the more it proves that both sides are eager to end the war. The sooner the war ends, the better. Conversely, if both sides remain lukewarm, continually entangled in testing each other, the duration of the war will only prolong. I need to accelerate my plans. Chunyu thought to himself. I must reach the Vales 03505658 star system as soon as possible to carry out subsequent tasks. At this moment, in the Wangliang star system, even though the distance has been reduced to just 10 billion kilometers, and standing here, the Wangliang star system appears calm. The universe is too vast. Its enormity can conceal any changes in detail. Only by closing the distance further can the true nature of this battle be seen. On a massive planet with a diameter of 150,000 kilometers, tens of thousands of yellow spots are scattered across its surface. Only by getting closer can one see that those yellow spots are actually individual yellow energy domes. They are inverted like bowls on the ground. The areas enclosed by them can be protected from external attacks. Under each yellow light shield, countless massive buildings stand tall. Various modes of transportation weave in and out between different structures. Amidst the constant movement of intelligent life forms, the enormous machinery hidden within these buildings operates normally. The nuclear fusion power plant generates enough electricity to supply the energy shield generator at the core, which supports the yellow light curtain, providing protection for all the buildings inside. In the sky, countless shining stars shift positions rapidly, and every so often, a star suddenly erupts, releasing a brilliance brighter than that of a star. Whenever this brilliance is seen, both the local inhabitants and the neighboring communities know that a warship has been destroyed. A dense barrage of electromagnetic projectiles rains down from space, striking the pale yellow energy shield like a torrential downpour, creating ripples across its surface. To counter the immense kinetic energy of these projectiles, nearly every energy shield generator in the defensive bases operates at full or overloaded capacity. Tiny sparks continuously erupt from the massive equipment, and in some areas, fires break out. Trained repair personnel move swiftly in hover vehicles, extinguishing fires and conducting repairs. Under the protection of the energy shield and the power supply from the nuclear fusion plant, numerous factories work frantically to produce vast quantities of components and military supplies, yet the warehouses are perpetually empty. This is because ships, large and small, are always waiting here. As soon as a portion of military supplies is accumulated, they are immediately transported away, seamlessly integrating into the damaged warships to sustain their continued combat. Areas protected by energy shields fare better. However, those without value and lacking protection have been turned into scorched earth by highly energetic electromagnetic projectiles. It is true scorched earth. The rocks have long since melted under the intense heat, flowing as dark red lava across the ground, destroying everything in its path. Towering mountains thousands of meters high have been flattened, and the ocean water has boiled, turning into steam that continuously spreads into the sky. Under the assault of electromagnetic projectiles, some materials have even attained speeds sufficient to escape the planet's gravity, directly fleeing into space. This is still the situation before the surface has been directly attacked by hydrogen bombs. If such an attack were to occur, the devastation would be even more severe. The reason the surface has not been targeted by hydrogen bombs is not due to the mercy of either side, but because the chaos is so overwhelming that large interstellar missiles capable of carrying hydrogen bombs cannot reach the surface. Their flight speed is too slow. As soon as they appear, they are destroyed by the overwhelming barrage, self-detonating before being obliterated, transforming into a momentary sun in space that lasts just a few seconds before vanishing. Each hydrogen bomb explosion can clear everything tangible and intangible within a radius of several dozen kilometers, turning all matter into interstellar dust. Under the intensity of such combat, a mist gradually enveloped the surroundings of this planet. Wreckage of warships, stray projectiles, and various dust, debris, and fragments rising from the planet's surface formed a thick layer, reaching a thickness of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, far exceeding the size of the planet itself. Chapter 146. Traces outside a planet's atmosphere is a world completely different from that within, with entirely distinct environments. Interstellar warships are undoubtedly designed for space warfare. However, at this moment, the overall condition of this planet was affected, resulting in the emergence of an atmosphere in places that previously had none. Yet the fighting continued. Even in such an entirely unsuitable environment for combat, both sides risked damage to their warship engines to fight. Both understood that there was no way out for either of them. In this situation, a warship's survival on the battlefield largely depended on luck, rather than the tactical or strategic capabilities of its crew or the tonnage of the warship. Every participant could only go with the flow, leaving their fate to the heavens. This was the most brutal aspect of the conflict. The battle for this planet had become gruesomely indescribable. Yet, Marshal Lewent understood that the struggle occurring here was merely a small part of the larger campaign. The battles taking place elsewhere in this star system were no less intense. Marshal Lewent clearly saw that on Planet 6, a massive lake covering an area of 1,000 square kilometers and nearly 100 meters deep had completely dried up. With no sign of where the water had gone, he observed that the towering mountain on Planet 7, which reached 10,000 meters in height, had been entirely flattened, replaced by a vast basin filled with lava. Surrounding this small planet was a previously non-existent asteroid belt, with some asteroids measuring hundreds of meters in length and others as small as grains of dust. Countless asteroids were careening through space. He witnessed a dense barrage of electromagnetic energy projectiles, like raindrops, that missed their targets and struck the nearby star instead. Each electromagnetic projectile weighed only a few grams, insignificant compared to a star, and could be ignored. However, the sheer number of projectiles hitting the star caused noticeable changes. Massive sunspots began to form on the star's surface, and enormous solar prominences extended millions of kilometers into space under the influence of stellar winds. The intensity of the stellar winds had increased several times over, sweeping across the interstellar space. Even the brightness of the star had increased by 1. A brightness increase of 1 is astonishing for a star, and such a change could even be detected through telescopes from tens of thousands of light-years away. Lewent also observed a massive asteroid, measuring up to 260 kilometers in length and exhibiting a cylindrical shape with a central diameter of over 80 kilometers. Such a large asteroid could even reach a mass of approximately 26 trillion tons. However, during the conflict between the two sides, this enormous asteroid was directly severed. One segment managed to acquire enough kinetic energy to break free from its existing orbit and crashed violently toward a star. At the moment of impact, the brightness of this star surged by half instantaneously. Radiation across various wavelengths and an unimaginable stellar wind swept through the entire star system, even causing some warships to become incapacitated. Lewent clearly realized that the conflict between the two sides had completely altered the appearance of this star system, leaving indelible